Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ango Show Live. My name is Ango, and of course, I'm joined by Billy TKO on YouTube. We just finished watching AEW Dynamite, and I'm in a
Didn't
different
we
mood
now?
this week. Billy.
Why is that, Ango?
Last week, it was the best Dynamite of the year.
And
This
how is it now?
Dynamite, it was the worst Dynamite of the year.
Man,
I know.
for real?
It was a good joke, right? I feel
It
like it's a good,
was.
you
It
know.
was.
I definitely felt like last week's Dynamite was better than this week's, and there's a big reason for that, and we're obviously going to talk about it. But ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us tonight following AEW Dynamite, we appreciate you being here. We're doing a live simulcast here on my channel as well as Billy's channel. So if you guys want to support the channels, drop a super chat. Feel free to do that. It's always greatly appreciated. You could drop a super chat on my channel or Billy's channel, youtube.com/@BillyTKO.
Oh man. What you
Big
feeling,
ending.
man? Big
Billy,
ending.
it was do I like the ending? Good question. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm a little iffy on this. If you guys
Okay.
don't know what we're referring to, Dynamite went off the air with Tony Schiavone asking Sting who his retirement match was going to be. And it was their returning Young Bucks. So, Billy, what are your thoughts on that?
Um right off the rip, I didn't like it.
But
Am
why?
I so just it to me it doesn't make sense. Like I don't I don't get the continuity behind it. It genuinely does not make sense to me. I feel like it just like it's the Young Bucks. Cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I feel like they should be doing something completely different. The whole time I was wondering if Sting was going to have a singles match or a tag match by
Yeah.
himself. I guess this kind of answered it for me and what it's going to be. And maybe you can kind of get me to care. But I don't know how. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, Billy, I feel very weird about this. It's a weird feeling seeing that they're going this route with the Young Bucks and Sting and Darby. Personally speaking, I feel like the best way for Sting to retire would be through a singles match with Darby. You
Yeah.
know, there's obviously that history with them. They're one of the best teams in terms of winning. Um, Darby is one of those guys where this is where I'm a little bit shocked. Darby's one of the four pillars. Once Sting is gone, they have to get back to making people care about him as a singles guy, which I don't think will be very difficult. I think people like Darby Allin. I think he does well in the company.
Yeah.
Um, but I just feel like it's an odd choice for them to do a tag team match. I feel like you could do a babyface versus babyface match with Sting and Darby, and yeah, it would probably be predictable in the sense that Sting would pass the torch over to Darby, but I don't think predictability is bad in that case. I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah, like the closing. So like I'll tell you, throughout Dynamite, I was actually texting you and I was
Yeah.
saying how I had some things I wanted to say and I still do. But after watching, I just after seeing that ending, I don't know, like is it bad? It made me tired? Not tired in the sense of like actually tired, but more tired in the sense of like what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like your show was fine. I like seeing some older faces like Preston Vance. That was cool. You know what I mean? But just genuinely just confused. I, I don't know what you're gonna do, especially after the news yesterday. You know, I thought tonight was gonna be huge, right? With everything with Tony Khan on Twitter.
Yeah.
I was under the impression I was like, yo, tonight's gonna be a big show. And like the Young Bucks haven't been gone long enough for me to miss them. Is that bad?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. For Tony Khan, I think he got what 7 or 8 million views on his tweet.
Yeah.
Got a lot of people talking about the opposition. this is your chance to capitalize on that internet buzz.
Yeah.
And that it didn't do it for me tonight. There were a few things that I liked, but I felt like a big amount of the show was underwhelming. I put it in the title. Is it an exaggeration? No, I don't think so. I think AEW has lost their mind when it comes to booking Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks, in my opinion, needs to go. Triple H, ring. Where's Triple H? Triple H, Hunter.
Put him on the phone.
Hunter.
Put him on the phone.
Hunter, I need
It's
you to
time.
save Ricky Starks. I need you
Somebody
to.
needs to come get that man.
They need to save
Somebody
Ricky
needs to
Starks,
come.
man.
Bro, somebody needs to come get Ricky Starks, because that was one of the things I wanted to sound off on.
Yeah.
I'm upset. I hate seeing it. Ango, how do you feel? Do you hate seeing Ricky Starks like this? Obviously you do. You want him with Triple H. Why do you want him with Triple H? What did Tony Khan do wrong with Ricky Starks?
Ricky Starks has a top star aura. The same ways that I think a lot of people look at MJF and say, okay, this guy is a top guy. Ricky Starks to me is a top guy. I don't know, man. I feel like he's got to go. He is way too good to be wasted in this company. And truth be told, bro, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's like I try to give AEW the benefit of the doubt with their booking, but right now it's kind of a little bit of a weird situation with the whole Jericho thing. And it's very clear. AEW's made it very clear that they are very much listening to the fans boo him, and that's why they got music playing and stuff. But when I see this whole situation, I see Ricky Starks and Big Bill. Like, this is my problem with Dynamite. Last week, we get Private Party, right? And it's like this huge, big ordeal about tag team championships. Like, people are in the hunt for it or whatever. And this week, I'm looking at one half of the tag team champions getting pinned by Sammy Guevara. And it's not a bad match by any means. I mean, when you look at back and forth competition, these two guys were great. That's not
bro,
my issue.
I love seeing the both of those guys on my TV screen.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. I feel like they're getting it wrong with Ricky Starks, and I just feel like I feel like when I watch this company, they have a lot of talent. They just don't know what to do with them. And I think Tony Khan will never know what to do with talent, because this is the same complaint I've been making for years. Like, this is not a new complaint. And I think that's the problem with the IWC, is if you say something negative about a booking situation, they think it's pure hatred.
Yeah.
But like, when you look back years ago with Ricky Starks and you see what they did with him in the FTW championship and Team Taz and everything like that. And yeah, it was just like, it feels like this guy is never really being given the chance to go and become something bigger than what he is. And I feel like it's really problematic now when I watch him get pinned by Sammy Guevara. Like, when I see him lose to Sammy Guevara, bro, I just think, I'm like, okay, he's one half of the tag team championship belt. You're not fulfilling any of my, like, last week I was like, oh, tag team wrestling's back. This week I think
now you can't believe him as a champion.
It's just, I don't know, man. I don't get it. And it's weird because to kind of compare it to Raw, like Finn Balor, you know, it's like if Finn Balor gets pinned by Ciampa, like, the reason for that is because WWE on a week-to-week basis is building up DIY.
Right.
So when I'm watching AEW television and I don't see this type of thing like happening where they're doing that with their tag teams. So when it's Jericho and Sammy Guevara, it's not the same as DIY sneaking a win from Finn Balor. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a little bit of a difference there. And I feel like that's a very difficult thing for me. And I know I get painted as the bad guy for saying this, but Ricky Starks is another talent who's underutilized. And after last night's Twitter war thing that Tony Khan was going after everybody, Eric Bischoff, and, you know,
he was letting it go.
We had Hook and Jinder Mahal get caught in the crossfires. And I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe this is a promotional tactic for him. You know, it obviously popped off with views. And I watched Dynamite tonight and I wasn't really excited. And you know, let me just preface this too, not to get too off topic, but like, guys, when I judge AEW tonight, there was 2 matches, 8-man tag matches. 8-woman and 8-man tag matches. Right. And they did that to honor Brody Lee. And I look at Tony Khan and I'm like, man, this is beautiful.
And it's awesome. You love seeing stuff like that, dude.
Yeah, I don't care that, like, it's a weird mix up of talent or whatever it may be. I don't care about that. Like, to me, the reason why they're doing it, you're honoring Brody Lee. That's the reason why Preston Vance gets the pin and stuff. That's the reason why Anna Jay gets the win for them. Like, I'm not going to judge this episode based on those two things because I like those things. Sometimes wrestling is bigger than like the wrestling TV show. They're doing it to honor a former champion in their company who passed away. I respect that and I love it.
Yeah.
But then I'm watching the rest of the show and I'm just thinking, like, this is Dynamite Homecoming. You have it branded as a special episode, and then this is like what you give me. I don't know. So weird. My feeling from last week to literally this week, it's such a difference.
So when we said in the beginning of the show that this was the worst of the year, it really was. Like, so when I think of Ricky,
Well, there's only been 2 episodes. Let's just make sure people
let
understand.
me clarify that. Only 2 episodes this year so far. But let me break this down, right? When I see somebody like Ricky Starks, you know what I mean? I see somebody like Ricky Starks who I know has potential beyond means that you could see from a million miles away, right? You see him lose. You see things happen in a way that they shouldn't. And I don't know. Watching Ricky Starks lose, it rubs me off. And I get it. You had Sammy Guevara come back last week. And you're like, okay, he needs to win, right? Because if we're going to build him up, he should win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when it's Ricky Starks who's taking the pinfall, like I look at what happened with Roderick Strong, tonight, where he needed a win, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of just went out and beat a guy that not many people knew about, but, you know, I think it was Excalibur that made the call. He was working his way up through the ranks. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You told me. Yeah. But if you're not telling me why Sammy Guevara, why him winning this match is important, then I just look at it like you just had Sammy Guevara beat Ricky Starks, who's the AEW Tag Team Champion, for absolutely nothing. And there was nothing to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it just sucks to see. It sucks to see how they've booked him. And I do agree with you in the sense of it's time to get him into WWE. We've seen him training at the dungeon. I don't know when his contract is up, but I can imagine at some point he will end up in the WWE.
Assemble, fellow YouTuber Assemble left a comment on here and he says Ricky as a top guy in TNA would work. And I agree. I fully agree with that. And it's not just WWE. I feel like Scott D'Amore and Triple H both would do wonderful things with him. And it's very rare that I throw out the word buried. But to me, it feels like they have no plans for him. It feels like they have nothing for him. And what I love too, and this is the great thing about AEW, and when I say this is a great thing, it's complete sarcasm because I've said this probably since 2021. Their fan base, whenever somebody is critical of a talent booking, the argument always becomes, oh, they're overrated. They shouldn't be there anymore. They should just go away, you know? And then I said, be careful what you wish for, because when you have a talent like AEW has, like their roster, and your potential top stars end up going to the opposition, what else do you have to show for people? And
seeing them walk is one of the worst things that can happen.
Like, guys, the reason why AEW needs MJF is because it's not about booking. It's MJF, aside from being MLW, Create a Pro, stuff like that. MLW became this major name because of AEW. So, you know, if AEW lost MJF, that kills them. That hurts them very significantly. So we saw this with Jade Cargill, right? We see this with talent. Jade Cargill left, and people all of a sudden she leaves to the WWE, and it's she's not even good. They don't like her anyways. She's not even good. She's no value. And then I laugh at this. because Tony Khan's out here tweeting about all this bullshit. with like records and stuff. And I look at Jade Cargill, who won 1 trillion matches and never really lost. And
Right.
that was your big star. So yeah, I think, like I said, like there's things about AEW tonight that were okay, and there was things where I didn't like it. But I have a problem with AEW, and it really comes down to
Okay.
they're not helping me get invested into the future episodes. So last week they did. This week they didn't. This is a common complaint that I constantly have about the AEW, and I'm apparently the fucking bad guy of the IWC for pointing this out.
Which is wild, bro.
No, I'll embrace it. I'll
Okay.
embrace it because here's the thing. I'll embrace it. If it makes me the heel or the bad guy in the IWC for saying this, I truly don't give a flying shit, because at the end of the day, I'm just a fan. So if AEW, for example, if they're going to inconsistently keep putting on shows where certain things are good, certain things are bad, I can manage that, right? I
Right.
can watch that. That's still watchable to me.
Right.
But eventually, when you have more bad than good, what eventually happens is you start to really lose me. Now, for some people, they might agree with me, and those people are probably the ones that you don't want to lose, because the ones who agree with me are, if people know how I am as a wrestling fan, they know that 1,000,000% I am truly fair and non-biased. Now, this gets thrown out a lot in the IWC. Oh, you're biased. You're this. I've gone to more AEW events out of pocket than any other wrestling company. So if I was biased, that's kind of how I look at it. Personally speaking, I think there's a lot of great things in AEW and there's a lot of bad things in AEW, but my problem is consistency, because there's things like tonight that I saw, and I truthfully don't believe in my heart that AEW is a bad company. But what I believe is that there is a lot of talk about AEW and the drama surrounding AEW and this bullshit Twitter stuff and all this stuff. And the talk isn't on the product. And I think that is largely due to the fact that the product is inconsistent.
And I want to kind of tag on to what you've said. This isn't an AEW bash fest. Let's make that clear. That's not what this is. What this is talking about how AEW is as a company and where they can improve. Because a company, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't die, we'll say, right? They should not.
No, it shouldn't. That's
no. Because I see that a lot on Twitter is, oh, they're dead, blah, blah, blah. AEW's not dead. Yeah. They have things to work on. And to sit up and not critique a company that we believe can do amazing things. Why? Because we've seen it. So to get up and I see what Tony Khan did yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of upsets me because we've given Tony Khan a lot of love, right?
Yeah.
When the company first started, there was so much love to give for Tony Khan.
Yeah.
But he cannot, and he struggles with the same criticism that he was willing to give to the quote unquote opposition, right?
Yeah.
When he first started, because AEW was sending quote unquote shots, right? Mm-hmm. To WWE for the longest time. Cannot take the same criticism that we were giving WWE. Well, why is that? Tony Khan, I think he struggles with it. I think this world that he stepped into became too much of a battle for him. Is that bad to say? Am I wrong for saying that?
No.
That Tony Khan is stepping into a world where it is based strictly off criticism? Because look at TNA, right? TNA doing wonders. They're doing amazing. We talked about it earlier over text. I said, these belts look amazing. That's what you texted me. Excuse me. You said these belts look amazing. I said, absolutely. That's how you rebrand a company. And I just genuinely think that Tony Khan has stepped into a world of pure criticism that he might not be able to handle. And
I'll tell you, I think one thing I would really point out too is it's like I said in the beginning, it's not a terrible episode. It was the worst episode of the year. I say that because obviously there's 2 episodes in, but there's things that I like and there's things I dislike. And my biggest gripe is consistency. That's all. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. I'm not mad at the Young Bucks potentially having a finals, retirement match with Sting and Darby. No, I just think the better way to go about it is by having, Sting put over Darby, because I'm looking at a singles career for a guy once Sting retires. I look at Ricky Starks losing to Sammy Guevara as a big deal, because at the end of the day, Ricky Starks to me is a guy who should be presented on a much more serious top guy level.
Yeah.
I look at and I know there's a lot of people who they want to listen to one thing and not everything I say,
Yeah.
but the reason why I don't care to say, oh, there's an issue with the 8-man, 8-woman tag matches, to me, those are the things that make AEW special.
Yeah.
That the fact that, there is things that they can do that are great and positive, and then I look at other things that are bad. And then I found something really fascinating tonight when they had Samoa Joe with his challengers thing, right? And this is me being a little funny on Twitter, but this is me
Mhm.
also being honest as a viewer. Now,
Yeah.
thankfully, I'm not an idiot like some of these other incels on the
On the internet?
IWC. Yeah, on the internet. Look at this. I literally put out a tweet and I responded to Tony Khan's double standard tweet because it's fun. But I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, Tony Khan, I really love how you tweeted this. You had a segment tonight with Hook, Swerve, Hangman Page, and Samoa Joe, and didn't put Hook in the same ring as all of them, even though Hook has a better record than them all. Way to show me that Hook is a legitimate competitor amongst the rest." Now, the big thing that I'm seeing is that people are like, "Well, here's the thing." They're like, "Hook obviously stands alone because he's the one who is the next challenger."
Yeah.
However, when I see, first of all, and this is something I'm absolutely a fan of in wrestling right now, between Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and Dynamite, everybody wants the world championship. And I like this because that means the world championship means a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
But there is some truth to my tweet. If you really believed Hook, who has the better record than all those other guys in the ring, he has the better record, why isn't he standing there, all four of them? And I get it. It's probably because they want to plan a triple threat for Revolution and Hook's
That's
going to
what
have a
my
singles
thought.
match on
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Uh-huh.
That's fine. But if you're trying to convey a message to me that Hook is a better champion than Jinder Mahal, why aren't you putting him in the ring with your top three guys? And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to hear about this, but the reality is we're talking about records. Tony Khan says
Yeah.
wins and losses matter. So
Yeah.
show
He's
me.
been saying that. That's
So
been his whole
my
shtick.
issue, so my thing is, it's not, oh my God, I hate it. It's, this is your flaw, and I'm bringing it to your attention because it's a very real flaw. And that's the thing with Dynamite tonight. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. They got 8 of the best women, in the ring. Cool.
Great.
They got the Tony Storm backstage segments and stuff. Cool, great. Again, women's division's like on the rebound with this company. I
Right.
complimented that last week.
Right.
Dude, that's my expectation.
It
My
should be.
expectation, that's my expectation now. So I always feel like with AEW, it's just inconsistency. That's what it is. It's inconsistency.
Where was
Any
Daniel Garcia?
so and here's the thing, right? To not to defend AEW,
Okay.
but they have Rampage and they have Collision. Now,
Yes.
it goes back to what I was saying before. I was like, now if I don't see, because we had this issue with WWE and I spoke too soon on
Mhm.
Monday Night Raw, and I had this issue last week with Dynamite, but I was like, well, if they don't follow up with something, at least by the time Collision comes on TV, that's my issue. So
Yeah.
yeah, no Daniel Garcia, but I can't be mad at that. But now if we get to Collision Saturday, I'm going to say,
Where's
where's
Daniel
that?
Garcia? Because
Yeah.
you've said, hey, expect more of him on your TV screen
Yeah.
throughout the year. So now I have this expectation that Daniel Garcia will be on my TV screen more. I don't know, man. I don't know. I see everything going on. Go ahead. I'll let you do your thing.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Actually, no.
So I see.
Hold your thought. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
hold your thought.
you're all right.
We
Yeah.
got a super chat from Real Take Wrestling. Omer, if you're still in the chat, I want to bring you into the show. So I'm going to send you an open invite. I'm going to DM it to you on Twitter. I would love nothing more than for you to join the show. It's been a minute since we chatted wrestling. Omer thinks the wrestling episode tonight was good, and I cannot wait to have this conversation. I would love to bring Omer in. So, Omer, if you are here, I would love to have you join us on camera. I just DM'd it to you. And let's
I'm
chat.
subscribed to him on YouTube, so
I love to have a conversation with Omer, because I don't think the episode was great at all. I don't think this was a shitty episode. I just think there's a lot of flaws, a lot more flaws today than last week. And my job is to point out the flaws in my perspective. Anyways, Billy, while we wait to see if we get a response from Omer or not,
yes, sir.
the floor is yours. Actually, hold on. We did get another super chat really quick.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Dan Moser dropped a $4.99 super chat. He says, I've been watching and going to wrestling events since 1982 and saw some great shows live on TV. And I can tell you tonight was not great. And not every episode needs to be a home run, by the way.
No, too much wrestling for that.
I don't think you don't need to, it doesn't need to be great. I don't think wrestling needs to be great. I think even WWE doesn't need to be great. I've put up a lot of shit with Vince McMahon wrestling booking. So
gotta be great. Just be consistent.
Just be consistent with what you're trying to show me. That's all.
Yeah,
that's all I care about.
Not too much to it.
Scripps dropped a $2 super chat. He says, Ango, you need mods in your chat. I do.
I've seen some things going on.
I do.
Been watching chat a little bit.
It is hard to moderate. I don't know. I don't know where Robin is. Robin's usually one of my mods, but we'll have to figure this out at some point.
Yeah, because people are going crazy in here.
Andre Benson dropping a $5 super chat. He says maybe Tony Khan is losing it lately is because his Jaguars got eliminated from the NFL playoffs. I said Dynamite might be off a little bit this week, and it was. You know, I think this is an interesting thing because people do forget that these guys do actually they are humans. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that is something I want to point
emotions out. Happen.
Yeah.
And the way they got sent home is even more painful to think about.
Now what's amazing, and I want to see how this works. Okay, guys, this is on the fly. This is going to be a fun little conversation. Oh my God. Oh yes. Omer from Real Take Wrestling, ladies and gentlemen.
Guys, you were burying a show I like. That means I hate you now, right?
Oh no. I hope not.
Means I got to bury you on Twitter and you know, send bots after you all the whole nine. What's up, guys?
What's up, brother? Omer, ladies and gentlemen, from Real Take Wrestling. This is fun. This is he thought tonight's episode was great. So I'm curious because I have a little bit of criticisms. I don't know how much you've been listening or whatever, but I did want to bring you in so we could discuss. Billy, Omer, we are going to try to do this as professional and
let's get down to it. Let's get down to it.
Yeah.
I like the purple. Like the purple's really the vibe.
So do I.
I wasn't anticipating 3 guests at the same time, 3 people at the same time, but you know what? This could be kind of fun. So, Omer, what did you like? What did you dislike? Let's hear.
I liked nearly everything on the show. And I think and there are gonna be a lot of people who are like, "Oh my God, you like this show that I liked or I didn't like," and whatever. It's okay, guys. It's professional wrestling. It's a TV show at the end of the day.
Yes. Right.
And the reason I liked it was twofold. One, I think this episode did a really good job of mixing the AEW that like a lot of the quote unquote hardcore, more long-term AEW fans have kind of wanted from the product over the past year. 2 years now, ever since they started integrating Ring of Honor and everything kind of got messy, in my opinion.
Yeah,
they did a good job of integrating like that old school AEW feel to, and also like I think setting things up for the future. And I think one thing that like I think they did right was that World Championship segment, and it's okay. I know you disagree.
That I don't disagree with. That I do not disagree with.
No, hold on. See, that's the thing.
No,
Omer, I don't disagree.
No. I wasn't talking about the World Championship segment. I was talking about like, you guys. I saw you guys laughing about like when I said they did a good job of like mixing those like feels, like the old school feel and then the new school feel.
No, I agree. You know what I was laughing for?
No, I don't know.
I got really giddy inside. Because
bro,
because me and Billy talk wrestling all the time.
Yep.
And the thing is, I love having a different perspective, and I just got really excited because I think this is going to be a hell of a conversation, honestly.
It's nice hearing different takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that segment, in my opinion, that like personified exactly what I think they were going for the show. They not only introduced Samoa Joe as the new reigning defending champion, they also brought in both Swerve and Hangman, kind of bringing in those two wrestlers' stories into the world title picture without, I think, stepping on Hook's moment, because next week Hook is going to be the challenger for the belt. And what you want to be able to set him up to be that challenger. You want to be able to set him up to have this big match with Samoa Joe. That's literally a career defining moment for him, right? And also, I'm almost done. And also make sure that you plant the seeds for this match that we all think is going to happen at Revolution. I think that was the perfect way to kick off the Samoa Joe championship run. I think it's the perfect way to build the Revolution. It's the perfect way to build the next week. All right.
And
I don't want to talk over anybody.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So what I think could have been a little bit better of an idea, right? And I would love to hear both of you guys do this, right? But and I'm being so genuine and honest when I say this, right? I see AEW having multiple guys ready for the world championship. I said this Monday. It's a fantastic problem to have in WWE. It's also a fantastic problem to have in AEW. The fact that I think there are tons of people on this roster, based on how they've been booked and presented on television, that are ready to step up and assume that position. And so I like the fact that they have these guys coming out and they want Samoa Joe's belt. However, what if AEW, just a little slight change? What if they had Samoa Joe, Hangman Page, and Swerve all in the ring, and just as Hangman Page and Swerve are walking out of the ring, going up the ramp or whatever it may be, that's when Hook's music hits and he shoulder checks one of those guys. Now, it might sound silly, but the reason why I present this idea is because it was like we had the segment, those guys got out of the ring. Oh, and now here comes Hook. Like, it's almost, to me, it almost kind of spoke like Hook wasn't good enough to be next to these guys. And visually speaking, if you want to tell me that Hook is the future, have him just interact with them. Hook is not a guy that cuts promos on TV regularly. This guy hasn't really been in major storylines in AEW. This is a guy who, for the most part, his record's been padded by, squash matches and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my issue was Tony Khan was talking about his record and how Jinder hasn't wrestled in a year, blah, 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 blah. I look at the record and I'm like, okay, cool. Show me something on TV that convinces me that he stands toe to toe with some of these guys, like he's on their level, if records are that important. Am I wrong for thinking you could have just had some small, slight interaction with Hook? A shoulder check would have been dope. They're walking away, he shoulder checks them, and then he gets in his face of Samoa Joe.
Yeah, I think that's how you, because, okay.
Right? Hold on. Everybody, if you want
ahead.
to talk, just raise your hand. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So the idea of Hook actually getting, like, I see what you're saying, and I also see what you're saying too, right? Because I do see the idea of giving him that moment by himself and then trying to create that story. So the question needs to happen is, where is Tony Khan actually going wrong here? What is he doing wrong, and why is this such a problem right now? Because you, right, are saying that, oh, I want more of a story is what it sounds like coming from you. And you are enjoying the moment. And I appreciate the moment too. I'm not going to lie. That is one segment that I actually enjoyed. I did like the idea. I did like the idea of Hook coming out by himself. I was a fan of it. But I will say, I also see the point of like, oh, are we going to go strictly off record? Because if that's the case, don't even try telling stories at all. Sorry. I'm just going to be honest. If you're going strictly based on storytelling or on records, don't even bother with the stories. Skip it. Let's just get to the match. Right.
So it just real quick. I think like part of, I think what you guys are also talking about is like that tweet that Tony Khan sent out.
Yes.
I haven't been watching the whole time, so I may have missed like that part of the conversation. Like, and I think Billy, you're right. Like the way I kind of view it is separate from the Twitter beef. Like
right. Everything
I'm
that was
not
going on.
like I'm not even really active on Twitter that much. I'm just kind of like I'm just like there when I am, and I don't really pay attention. I saw the Jinder stuff. I thought it was ridiculous, honestly, and I thought like there's like a certain level of I think acceptable like back and forth, playful like shots at each other you can take. And I think like
I
it was
think
just one of those. It stepped over the line a little bit, like, but it happens. Like I don't, and I try not as a fan, right? And I think this is like just me, maybe. I try as a fan not to let any of that stuff like affect the way that I view the show, because if I did, right, it would like take away everything. Like, and then I'd be like, like one of these fans who's like always like, oh my god,
Wow.
CM Punk, he's the worst thing in professional wrestling. He ruined Hangman Page's title run. He ruined every career. Like that stuff is like it can be fun to talk about with like your wrestling friends, and like like we all like have those conversations, but it's like I don't like to fixate on that stuff just because like if you do, for me at least, it takes away from what I'm watching on TV. But I will say this, as far as the Hook thing goes, just real quick, going back to that.
Yeah.
As a fan of comic books, as a fan of Batman, I thought it was really cool the way they introduced them, like with the little
with
hook,
the light,
signal. I was like,
that was sweet.
and I like your idea, Ango, but I was like, look, if there was like if this is the direction they went in, we got the bat signal or the hook signal. I'm like, I like it. So, but yeah,
here's the cool thing: they still could have done that with my scenario. What I'm saying is Tony Khan just needs to just crack into a little bit more creativity. That's all. But I will ask you this though. And I'm one of these guys, I talk about it a lot, and I feel like it's kind of been brought up here. But there's so much talk in the IWC, and it actually kills me. Like literally, I think I get so annoyed by it. But it's this whole thing of like story this, story that. What's the story? Story. Hey, story. They're not telling stories or blah 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 blah. Right? Let me ask you, fellas. I am one of those people that believe storytelling. It's not the end all be all. But my thing that keeps me watching is the purpose of why it's happening on TV. Right. So when everybody talks about storylines and Omer, you said something earlier. You said about kind of how it did a good job of restoring the old feeling and the new feeling. Right. The reason why I disagree with that is because I feel like sometimes things happen it happens with a purpose. It's not just necessarily the purpose that I like. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you watch wrestling and when you guys watch wrestling, when everybody's talking about storylines and storytelling, what do you think AEW's strong suit is actually what is their actual strong suit when it comes to being another wrestling company in the world? Like right now in the world where there's MLW and AEW and WWE and TNA and NXT and AAA and CMLL and all of these other companies, what is it to you that AEW does that keeps you watching? Is it the storytelling? Is it the purpose of why everything is happening? Is it the wrestling? What is it that keeps you hooked as a fan?
So I'll answer this right away off the rip. You want to know what keeps me invested in AEW? It's the hope and the beginning mission statement that genuinely keeps me watching and keeps me intrigued with AEW. That's what I hope for, because they have such a packed roster, and the roster is so strong and it's so deep that you just hope and you hope and you hope and you hope that they can get it right and things will go right. Again, this is not a bash of AEW or nothing like that. This is me genuinely saying, hey, I want to see these guys do well. I don't want to see AEW fail. I don't want that. I've been saying that from the start, right?
Okay, but what is it from a weekly episodic show that keeps you watching?
It's simply just the hope that next week will be better than the week before. With the pro wrestling side of things,
Billy, I was gonna say I watched WWE like back in like 2019, 2018, like for that same reason. And like my advice would just be like that, don't watch, because like I'm not saying that in like in a mean spirited like
no, absolutely. I get exactly what you're saying.
Like if that's like your reason, like you want it to be better, you just hope that it would be better, and it's not actually getting better. Then I think like
to say that it's not getting better would be wrong, because there are some things, and I think the idea of like some of the roster or like some of the stars on the roster, keep me interested. Like, obviously, I'm a big Adam Cole fan. I like Adam Cole. You know what I mean? Yeah. Big Adam Cole fan. So, that's one reason I watch, right? Love MJF. I do. Obviously, he's not there right now, but watch for him. I think he attracts a feeling in, as a wrestling fan, that's a feeling that we all hope for,
He invokes emotion out of you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He grabs emotion. So, to sit up and say like, oh, I watched strictly off that would be wrong. But there are, a lot of it's the roster. A lot of it is the roster. It's not so much because right now I don't think they're doing a good job storytelling. I think the wrestling's good, but I watch wrestling strictly because I love stories. I'm a big drama fanatic.
Okay. So are you saying that they don't have stories? Or are you saying they don't have quality stories? Like, what's
quality stories? Nothing that has grabbed my attention besides, I will say, the MJF stuff that I believe, again, we've discussed about emotion, right? Where it draws emotion.
Omer, what about you?
I would say like it's a combination of three things. Number one, AEW just has like some of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Like that's just Bryan Danielson, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks.
Great pro wrestlers.
Great pro wrestlers. MJF is like someone who I didn't think I was gonna be like as into as I am now. So they just have like my favorite wrestlers. Like WWE also has like wrestlers that I like, right? Yeah. But I would say like the thing that AEW kind of like outweighs them in is that just my favorites kind of went there back in like 2021. Yeah. So there's that. There's also the style. And I know that like Impact Wrestling probably has like the in-ring style that like resonates with me like the best as far as like North American promotions. Like I love New Japan Pro Wrestling. I like that fast, like action-packed, like almost cartoonish, like anime style of
very
wrestling.
Strong
like
style. The word is actually strong
That's
style.
What draws me in, and I think AEW did a good job of, like bringing that kind of style. I'm not gonna say they brought it in because like WWE had stars who were strong style stars, but like they kind of made it. They made it like the mainstay of and the main style of their promotion, which I like. And like I like that fast style. And on top of that, I think over the past, especially like ever since All In, I think they have done almost, in my opinion, like a 180 from where they were as far as like building people up, telling stories. Because like you had the MJF story, which I think we're gonna look back at in a few years as like one of the most like insane like turn of events and phenomenons, because MJF was a guy when he won the belt, like no matter what, he was getting booed out of the building everywhere he was going to go. And for him to become a babyface, for him to turn into a good guy, and it was almost like we never really realized when it happened. It just kind of happened. It was something that was unimaginable when he won the belt. But like you had that story, you had the rise of Swerve Strickland. You had Bryan Danielson, albeit, getting injured a few times, telling the story of his final run. And like characters like Tony Storm, that it's camp, it's cartoonish, but it's what I like, right? Yeah. And I think that those three factors are what it really comes down to. The in-ring style, the fact that my favorite wrestlers are there, and I just like the storyline and the character work. Is it always great? Hell no. There's a lot of stuff. I don't like Jericho. That's my thing. He's not my guy. But you're never gonna like everything 100% on a wrestling
100%,
show, right?
100%.
Never. 100%. And like I know fans who like to point out with the one flaw on a show or whatever, and then like that's what they
dude, people will pinpoint anything.
I will.
Right.
No, that's me. I will.
No, I wasn't talking about you, but
I will pinpoint everything that I think is wrong with the show. I will point out the flaws, right? Because for me personally, I'm a quote unquote wrestling analyst. I'm not a journalist. I'm not working media. I just watch the product, right? So I look at what they're presenting to me, and then I dissect it based on how they're telling me it's supposed to be, and then I give my input maybe based on what I would do differently, whatever it may be. Now, I don't tell anybody that my answer is right or wrong. I just share my point of view. Sometimes my point of view is very fucking popular, and sometimes it's not. But I'm always genuine with my thing. But I found something very interesting about something you guys said. You guys didn't really get specifics, right?
Yeah.
Oh, your favorite wrestlers. Oh, like that's cool, right? Like I get that. But truly speaking, what keeps you watching on a week to week basis is you like the company, you like some of the things that they do, but you're not being very specific in the sense of, I really like how they did this. Now, for example, I talked about this before. I'm a huge fan of whodunit storylines. And
Mhm.
this is not a popular opinion in the IWC. The
I'm right
devil
there with
story.
you. I'm
Yeah,
right there with you.
the IWC seems to fucking hate everything about Adam Cole and his promo today. And I thought this was actually a really good thing. I like the idea of the devil storyline continuing. Do I think there's flaws with the devil storyline? Do I think certain aspects of it are underwhelming? Of course. But I think it really changes the tone of the show when you see that Samoa Joe, Hangman, and Swerve are all in the ring together. And then later on, you see Adam Cole being the devil. And it's kind of reminding you of, hey, there was more to this story than just Adam Cole, being revealed as the devil, right? So it's something that keeps me hooked. It's something that keeps me going. And I'm starting to realize with AEW's fan base, they are very split on what they want. And this is actually the number one reason why the vision for AEW is so distorted. I think half of the AEW audience does want it to be like WWE. And I think the other half of the audience is totally okay with it going the NJPW route with just matches, matches, and matches. And the funny thing is, if you look at AEW from 2019 to 2021, I would say they had it right. It was like everything pretty much had a purpose. Were there flaws? Yeah, the women's division was weak. It wasn't booked properly, in my opinion. But did a lot of things happen on TV make sense? Yes. At that time, did AEW have a hard time pushing out new stars? Yes, and I still think they do. Has AEW gotten better with pushing out new stars? Yes. But where do I find the flaws? My example of Ricky Starks. Losing to Sammy Guevara makes no sense to me. It doesn't add credibility to Ricky Starks as a champion. So, to kind of rewind a little bit, the reason why I ask you guys, what is it that keeps you going? Billy, I agree with Omer when he said it to you. He's like, if you're just waiting for them to get better, like don't do it because you're going to be
Yeah, no.
disappointed, right?
Yeah. Right.
The reason why I keep watching AEW is because I think AEW does the bare minimum to keep me a fan. And that's the same thing that Vince McMahon did for a very fucking long time. So the good
Right.
news is AEW has shown me before how they could really get me invested. And they've shown me at times why I shouldn't be invested. But because I know they still have it in them and they still do it periodically, it's enough for me to say, hey, I don't mind giving it a chance. I also want to point out, because I don't want to keep talking, but I did want to point out, Omer, I don't know if you saw last week, but I said last week's episode of Dynamite was far better than anything they did in 2023.
Yes.
And a lot of people didn't agree with me. Billy definitely didn't agree with me. But the reason why I felt that was because everything felt important. And I don't like comparing companies to other companies. But the only reason why I love WWE is because Vince McMahon used to book some good things here and there, kind of like what Tony Khan is doing right now, some good things here and there. But like Triple H is logical, and there's a purpose for literally every single thing that happens on TV. There is not one person that has been able to debunk what I'm saying in Discord, in my comments, or on Twitter. I say, give me certain examples of how this didn't make sense, and I'll explain it to you, and I'll show you. And if it didn't make sense after that, then I'm wrong. But there hasn't been one scenario. So that was really long-winded. But the point that I was trying to make, though, is with WWE, I'm not asking for extravagant storylines. Yes, sometimes you get them. You get the Sammy and Roman thing. You get the Dom and Rey Mysterio thing. With AEW, I'm not asking for these crazy melodrama storylines. Like, I like the devil thing. Is it a little underwhelming at times? Yeah. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But I like it because it keeps me hooked. And then what's cool is they have other talent in the ring putting on great matches. And this is what comes down to my biggest issue. The talent that I want to see on TV, if they're not on TV enough, that sucks already as it is. That's a major issue across wrestling in general.
Yeah,
But if they are lucky to be on TV and I don't see them getting pushed or booked or anything, I start scratching my head and wonder why certain people are booked. Omer said it best. He said he doesn't like Chris Jericho. I used to be a fan of Chris Jericho in AEW. I love the Inner Circle. I can go back and find the videos where I said the Inner Circle is amazing. Then you start to watch everything with Chris Jericho on TV, and I start to realize who the fuck is benefiting from this. And that's what I'm looking at here with Sammy Guevara being his tag team partner.
At some point, like the Chris Jericho kind of like started his own little Codyverse where it's like everything just kind of revolved around Chris Jericho, and it was almost separate from like the things that were going on TV. But I do just want to quickly go back to your point about like last week's episode, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people missed the point from both like a fan standpoint and also a business standpoint of why that episode was so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
It like the vibe that episode gave off for me was like kind of like a season premiere. Like, here's what AEW, here are the stars that AEW is going to focus on for the next year.
Yeah.
And while like, like people were complaining like, oh my God, it's going to do bad. And it's going to like, look, Sammy or Danny Garcia is not a draw, all that stuff. Right. I'm like, my thing, and this goes back to a problem that AEW's had with like the women's division is, if you don't give people the time to, be presented as stars, be presented in the main event, be presented in the ring, in promos, all that kind of stuff, you shouldn't be surprised when they're not drawing the ratings that you want, and I think that was an excuse that AEW used for a long time not to push certain women's wrestlers. And we've seen a little bit of a change in that direction. But I really think that, last week kind of set the, like it set the table for here are the stars we're going to have. It also coincidentally like coincided with the New Japan show in Wrestle Kingdom. So there were obviously not going to be some big time stars who were available that night. So I think it was a perfect turn of events. You said, here's what we have to offer in the future. Here's the guys to keep an eye on. And this week you were able to, kind of bring back some of those stars and bring more star power to the show. Start the storytelling, bring Samoa Joe in. And again, it's not perfect. Like, there is no professional wrestling company that I think is ever going to, satisfy me, to every degree. I think the closest any company ever came was like probably like Smack, whatever. Okay, so it was two times. It was the genesis of AEW 2019. And then it was like SmackDown weirdly in like 2016, like right when the brand split happened. I was like, that was peak when they had like they had AJ on top. They had, Heath Slater doing his thing and Mauro Ranallo on commentary. It was hitting on all cylinders. And then
great time.
Things happened. Randy Orton became champion. But love Randy, by the way. Anyway, but yeah, I think, I don't know. Like, again, it's for me, it's like, it's hard to sit here and disagree, right? Because like, you're not wrong, Ango, but at the same time, I think like one thing to like keep in mind just for everyone watching is like, I think I view professional wrestling kind of like Game of Thrones, right? Like that. No. Just hear me out.
Game of Thrones. No, I'll hear you out.
Not cinema, not in that respect, right? In that there's a lot of stuff going on the show. There's a lot of shit going on, right? You got Bran, you got the Night King, you got King's Landing, right? And for me, I love the stuff that was going on in the Wall. I love the stuff that was going on in King's Landing. It was my favorite part of the show. And then whenever they got the Bran, I was like, all right, word. I'm going to go check my phone. I'm going to go get something to eat. But it didn't take away from the show.
And it didn't take away from your feeling.
Exactly.
So I will tell you, I just want to point this out because you mentioned this. Game of Thrones was 8 seasons, right?
Yep.
Okay. I felt like with Game of Thrones, sometimes, not always, it depends on the season. And, this could become a freaking 3-hour conversation, if I try to break down Game of Thrones. But there were so many different parts of Game of Thrones where I'm like, there's too much stuff going on right now. And it's a little too much to like stay focused on certain parts of the show, if that makes sense. And then, obviously season 8, or I think season 7 was the one. I think
season
I hated season 7, but I
was
loved
horrible.
the ending for season 8,
And
right?
in season
You're
7 is
wild.
the reason.
I love you, bro, but you're wild for that.
Nah, I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. But
Season 7 is a perfect example of what's going on. I'm so sorry to cut you off, Ango. Season 7 is a perfect example of what's going on in AEW right now, to where it's, for me, right, personally, because again, we're all allowed to have our own wrestling takes here. I want to let the chat know that it is okay to have your own opinion on wrestling. You don't have to judge it on ours. You don't have to judge it on anybody's but yours, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I look at it like season 7 of Game of Thrones, right? Horrible, horrible season, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Season 8, you love the ending. It was great. This is not an AEW bash fest on my end. This is a AEW. I want to see you get better.
So what's funny though is a lot of people actually hated season 8 and loved season 7, but I was the opposite. I loved season 8 and I hated season 7. But here's the thing though, right? This is really the point though, and I'm so glad you brought up the comparison to Game of Thrones. And I don't want to be talking for 3 hours on this, but I do think AEW is actually like Game of Thrones in a sense. There is so much going on, and I think sometimes in order to tell the story better, not even the story, but tell the path for each wrestler or the purpose for each wrestler on TV, I think they need to slow down and let things breathe. Because I don't think, and this is why I get so annoyed with the cage match rating thing, right? I don't have a problem with cagematch.net or whatever it's called, right? But what I hate so much about this is there's a lot of different ways to judge pro wrestling. And I think AEW's identity is slightly distorted. And so I think for me, like if I go off of pure wrestling, right? I don't think there's a company, and this might even get some shit too. I think AEW does it better than New Japan, which I can see that being controversial in certain ways. But I think AEW has the best in-ring talent. I think they put on the best in-ring matches all the time. This is why when WWE does give you a couple nice bangers on Raw and SmackDown, it's like, whoa, like for me personally, I'm like, wow, like it's already a good story. There's a good focus on why they're doing it, but this makes it better, right? I don't argue with the wrestling standpoint of AEW. And it's so funny saying this because people will never believe me. But if you go back and watch the old videos, there was a time period when I looked at AEW storytelling as like, this is fucking incredible. And I still don't think that's gone from them. I still think they have it in them.
Was where it was like the best for me.
I think for even after COVID, bro, I honestly feel like just after All Out 2021, something happened in this company where things just started to shift. And obviously they got out of their honeymoon phase. And as more time went on, then you start to realize like that, you know, and I think that's why last week to me was like so amazing because I'm like, there's just, it brought such a good feeling to me watching it. But I just want to say to Omar's point, I just think there's too much happening, too many wrestlers they're trying to put in and get them over all at the same time and try to book people. And I think it's causing them to make decisions like booking Sammy Guevara over Ricky Starks. They don't need to have a singles match, bro.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Actually, what you could have really done was have Jericho and Sammy Guevara tag team against another tag team that hasn't been featured in a while, because last week they were trying to show us that tag team wrestling's back and it's a big focus. They could have done that tonight, have Jericho and Guevara look good prior to going to Battle of the Belts. Nonetheless, I really don't give a shit about Chris Jericho either way, and I hope that him and Guevara lose at Battle of the Belts. But that's my point. Just let things breathe and put other people on TV sometimes. You know, not everything needs to be rushed. And then sometimes, like, that's the thing, right? Sometimes they rush things and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they drag it out. And that's also a problem.
Yeah. Sorry. I just want to say real quickly, I do agree with you on the rush point. And like, I think the perfect, like, and like the perfect, like, comparison, right, is I think what was happening back in like 2021 is it was, I think, in a way kind of easier not to rush things because they only had that one show.
Yeah.
They only had Dynamite to book.
Yes,
so it was like, all right, here's what's gonna. So the beginning of the show would be, here's what we have stacked for Dynamite. You would see the show. At the end of the show, here's what you tune in for next week on Dynamite. Boom. You wait a week. There's more anticipation. But like, it feels like ever since like they had Collision, now we're gotten to a point where we don't even know what the hell is going to be on Dynamite next week. Outside of like Hook versus Samoa Joe, it's like Tony Khan's going to announce like 6 matches Tuesday night next week, right? Like that's kind of how it works. And I hate that, right? Because I want to know going in what
to
the show is
expect.
going to give me. I want to know. I want to have that anticipation. I want to feel like pro wrestling for me, right, as a fan, is like one of the few things like that gets me like excited like I was a kid. And that's probably why I still watch it, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm excited for something, when I'm excited for a big match, I'm excited for a big show. Like I want that feel. I'm hooked on a feeling. Trademark that, Tony Khan, right? Like so. I that's the part of pro wrestling that I like really love, and I feel like ever since like they've just gotten in this space of whatever it is. I don't know whether it's their comms, whether it's like just the way that they schedule out when they write their stories or what have you. We just don't have that anticipation, and I think in a way it's also hurting ticket sales because, bro, look. A lot of people out there who want to go spend the absorbent amount of money that they want to, that AEW is expecting them to spend, right? It's like, okay, but what am I getting? I don't know until the day of the show. Of course, I'm not going to buy the tickets then until last minute, or I'm just not going to, or I'm going to forget about it entirely and not show up.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot that needs to be worked out in AEW on the back end. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Like, from a business standpoint, I think from a story standpoint as well, too. But I just think like it's in my view for a company that's like, at this point 5 years old. I understand there are going to be growing pains. I understand all that stuff, but
Yeah.
at a certain point, right, you got to right the ship. I think 2024 is the year where you got to do it. Like you have to all those systems that we've talked about AEW needing to have in place from a comm standpoint, from a structural standpoint, HR, all that stuff. They need to get that down in 2024.
So I will say one thing that's been running through my mind during this whole conversation is the idea that it just doesn't feel like, and maybe you guys can elaborate, right? It doesn't feel like the IWC, we'll say. We're not even going to say, because I feel like the IWC, right, is mainly AEW's fan base, right? They haven't really captured a very big mainstream audience, not enough to really judge, right? And now this audience that they have has started to bash them, right? And on the internet has completely just let them have it, right? So in what way can they possibly regain that trust that they once had?
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Dead serious too.
Yeah.
Honest to God, truly genuine, right?
Bring it on.
This whole time we've been looking at like, okay, AEW shouldn't be like WWE, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if there's something I've learned with WWE that works, and it could work greatly for AEW, 3 things. And Omer, I agree with like the structural stuff
Yes,
too, right?
absolutely.
But 3 things that need to change, and then I want to hear if you guys agree. And WWE does these things. 1, more pay-per-views, right? 2, brand split. And 3, and this is the big one, releases. And I know this might paint a picture that I'm a villain, but let me explain. There are tons of people on this roster. Without a brand split, it kind of goes back to the whole thing of like, hey, we're having this issue of trying to get people like their expectation, right? My issue has always been inconsistency. So if you kind of have like a brand split, and it doesn't have to be super strict, but kind of like what they were doing when Punk was running Collision, it's this expectation of, hey, these people are on Collision. So if you watch the pay-per-view, right, you know you're not going to see a follow-up to that on Dynamite because they're not part of Dynamite. You're going to see that follow-up on Collision, right? And if you do that, I think, first of all, this works for a lot of ways, in my opinion, because WWE does do it right. There's guys on SmackDown who get a focus, and if they were sharing the same amount of talent on Raw and SmackDown, they wouldn't have that focus, right? More pay-per-views allows them to close the gap on certain storylines or close the book on certain storylines without having to wait 8 to 9 months like they did with Keith Lee and Swerve. And then what was the third thing that I said? It was
Releases.
the releases. Yeah. The releases is an interesting one. And I'm not saying Tony Khan should be a dickhead and just fire people. No, that's ridiculous. I don't want them to be like WWE in that regard. But Tony Khan has talent who aren't being used, and based on reports, and obviously we're talking dirt sheet stuff, but based on reports and stuff like that, there's a plethora of people who aren't happy in the company. And not every person's going to love their job, right? But if you have talent who are unhappy and it could save you money and you don't have plans for them because there are still talent not being utilized, I think Tony Khan shouldn't be opposed to the idea of mutually coming to an agreement with talent and saying, listen, as much as I hate to do this and I would love to keep you, and it makes no business sense for me to get rid of you, I'm going to make this right for both of us and I'll let you go. You have a non-compete clause for 90 days. I'll pay you for 90 days and then you're free to go elsewhere. Like, as long as they don't do the Vince McMahon approach of releasing 200-300 people at a time, and these are talent that want to leave the company, I think those three things literally solve every problem. And the cool thing is, if they keep doing what they're doing in terms of the in-ring stuff, I think their storylines naturally get better. The talent utilization naturally gets better. I think you start acquiring new fans a lot easier because you're setting the proper expectations for your fan base. It's just a couple small little things that you can do that WWE currently does that helps. And I don't know, man. I'm not trying to, like, they don't need to be another WWE. They could do what they're doing. I just think there's some issues that if they're fixed, I think I never think this company will die, but I think this would catapult them to a different level because it's like you're Daniel Garcia's. You capitalize that momentum on a weekly basis. You know, you have talent, you know, you could just do so much more with. And it's harder when you're trying to do 3 TV shows 5 hours a week and you're still showcasing the same regular faces. You know what I'm saying? Am I crazy for thinking those 3 things? Like, I don't know, man. You guys debate amongst yourselves, but I'm telling you, I think that would be a major change for them. And by the way, just so you guys know, monthly pay-per-views, yeah, it costs money to produce these, but I think Tony Khan and AEW have a fan base that has shown us that they're willing to pay for pay-per-views. So
Yeah.
whether it's paying for pay-per-views or streaming, I think they are going to make a lot more money and it's more value for the TV rights, which is obviously more profit. So again, combine that with releasing talent who don't want to be there and you're making more money. This is a company that's going to actually be profitable. But I'll let you guys go off and tell me if you agree, disagree. I know I've seen some funny facial expressions there, but would love to hear it.
So I agree, right? But I want to add one more thing, actually.
I'm just going to leave that up. Go ahead.
So I'm going to add one more thing to that. So
Yeah.
I do disagree though on the monthly pay-per-views. We talked about it the other day. I think it was last week, to where I think, maybe 6 out of 12 months. Give yourself some time.
Well,
Right?
they already do that now. They had 8 pay-per-views this year.
Did they?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So the one thing that I would like to add is that let Tony Khan give the pen up a little bit, right?
No, that's not the issue.
I think a lot of it is because a
Nope.
lot of people are judging the booking.
Nope. That's not
A
the
lot
issue.
A lot of people are judging because if I go watch Collision, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I see Collision, if we're talking about a brand split, right?
Yeah.
People are coming again. It goes back to what I said earlier of what's the problem? Well, a lot of people are bashing the idea of booking, right? So why not give the reign off to somebody like, maybe a Bryan Danielson, for instance, who is probably back there learning a lot, probably learned a lot from Vince, right?
Mhm.
Probably knows a thing or two. Hand him the reins to Collision, right? Because that's the one thing that if you go on Twitter, because again, I'm talking about this fan base that they have structurally built that is for them, who are currently bashing them
Yeah.
about the idea of booking. And then, again, I agree with, because everything that you're talking about is internal things.
Okay.
Those are internal problems that would fix the internal.
Let's flip the script. You say Tony Khan needs to hand over the pen. I love this argument. Omer, feel free to jump in whenever you'd like. Can you give me an example of a storyline that you didn't like with Tony Khan?
You really want that answer?
100%.
I told you last week. I do not like this devil thing.
Okay. Give me a reason why. Give me like your best drawn up reason as to why. Because it was Adam Cole?
it was because I hear you, right? And you're like, oh, I
Mhm.
like the idea of the revealing storyline. I don't. I've seen it too many times.
Gotcha. Okay, so you felt like it was repetitive.
Yes.
Okay, so that was your thing. Okay, let me ask you: do you think Tony Khan wrote that storyline by himself?
I mean,
Do you
hey,
think Tony Khan
have
writes?
you heard?
Do you think
Okay,
Tony Khan writes 100% of AEW shows?
hold on 1 second. Hold
Yeah.
on. If you're going to say that, right?
Mhm.
Let it be known because yes, as a fan watching, yeah,
Mhm.
I do believe that Tony Khan writes that show. I do
Okay.
believe he is the only person back there with a pen. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, according to Tony Khan himself, it's him, Will Washington, Jimmy Jacobs, and
Okay.
Pat Buck, and I think Brian Danielson at one point was helping,
Yeah, I did
and
see Brian Danielson. Yep.
there's a whole bunch of other people that are backstage. Now, let me
UT
give you
Marshall used to as well.
QT Marshall. Yeah. Now, that's actually part of the reason why QT Marshall left, because reportedly he felt like the vision of AEW was going away from the vision that he saw or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, my point that I'm making is that Tony Khan is not the issue as a booker. This is the biggest lie that the IWC will try to push out for anti AEW stuff. The issue with AEW is two things. There's an identity issue, which I do 100% believe that is true. But also, I think you have people that are WWE esque. They came from WWE, wrote for WWE, and Tony Khan was trying to find a different balance to the show and started taking ideas from people who do not share the same vision for what the product should be. I think, genuinely speaking, MJF, and I love MJF, and this might get me some heat on the internet because this is the type of stuff that people hate when I say, but the AEW fan base did not want stories like the Devil storyline. They didn't want this MJF type of character. MJF is very clearly trying to become the John Cena, the Hulk Hogan, the top guy for
Of
AEW
AEW.
of
Yeah.
AEW. And that is not the style that AEW's fan base initially wanted, right? They rejected that type of sentiment. This is why when you watch Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega, you knew you were going to get a great match out of it and you knew you were going to see stuff, but it was a very basic storyline. So I think what I've noticed with AEW is that it's not the actual writing that is bad. I do think they make some bad decisions as far as putting people over, capitalizing on momentum. But in terms of storytelling, their issue, I think, really comes down to identity and who's actually involved in putting these ideas together and then how they continue to go about it. So with Tony Khan, what I would actually do is find individuals who 100% understand what Tony Khan's AEW is supposed to be. And I think you could see along the way with AEW, there's two instances that came out from reports where you saw a shift in AEW. The first 6 months of the company, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, they were not involved creatively running the show with Tony Khan. They may have pitched ideas, but they were not running the show. Tony Khan took over the book 100%. That was the first time. And the second time was when Cody Rhodes left the company. I think you could see a huge shift in the way the company was presented and presenting storylines. Not only that, but you had guys like Kevin Matthews, KM, Pat Buck, and all of these other individuals who came into the company. And not that there's anything wrong with these guys. I think Pat Buck is tremendous. He's also credited for producing some really good women's matches while he was in WWE. But I think there's people that are involved backstage who have a different vision than Tony Khan, or Tony Khan has a different vision than them. I think there is something backstage within the structure of the company where some people want it this way, some people want it that way. And unfortunately, it's led to the point where you're getting these episodes where there could be something really freaking awesome and something where it's like, why did that happen?
Well, that's
It's
the good
never
thing
really,
about it.
it's never really, I always say this, it's an easy fix. It's literally finding out what you want your product to be. And I think AEW, in my opinion, and Omer, I want you to jump in, but I think AEW should go back to the way it was in 2019 to 2021. With how sick this roster is, I cannot imagine anybody debating whether or not that show would be good because it had your storytelling and then it had your wins and losses in your records. And as long as you go back and follow the actual power rankings and the records and intertwining stories with them, I think it's an all-around amazing company. Anyways, Omer.
Yeah. A lot was just said there.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly touch on the three things, Anga, that you laid out earlier. Number one, I believe it was like more pay-per-views. I I think like that like you're right. Like more pay-per-views is good. I think that 8 to 10 is probably the sweet spot for them. Just because I think, month. I think you're kind of like tied up in a weird place with monthly pay-per-views, especially when you have like big shows like Grand Slam, like Bash at the Beach, whatever like they call their summer shows, right? I think like probably 8 to 10 pay-per-views is a good thing, and like you can kind of leverage that in a streaming deal potentially with Max. Maybe, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Number two, you said brand split, and I agree with you in that if they do a kind of a soft brand split where you can have guys kind of go back and forth, like it's not like a stated thing, like Ricky Starks is only on Collision, right? It's kind of like you just know Ricky Starks is going to be on Collision. You just know who the colliders are, right? I think that would make Collision a much more compelling show because from my view, Collision's fallen off. Yeah. Like I love the early days of Collision because it felt like those stories were kind of special. It felt like a different show. It felt like I was getting to see, it wasn't just CM Punk. I was getting to see FTR only on Collision. I was getting to see the Bang Bang Gang only on Collision. And I was like, okay, that's the exclusive place for those wrestlers. That's fine by me. I know Saturday nights or Sunday morning when I watch on DVR, I'm going to tune into that and have a hell of a time watching that show. Just has not been the same. Also, the inconsistency in like the production of that show. Like some weeks they have those, the preludes, like the intros. Some weeks they don't even have the Elton John, which is like, come on, like you bought the song, just play it. Yeah. So I'm like, whatever. But I think a lot of like the stuff that, the three of us have kind of alluded to are those like structural things, right? For the company. And I think part of it can be explained, like I'm not going to say explained away, but part of it can be explained as growing pains, right? Yeah. Like we have to admit at a certain point, right? They're going to make some mistakes. And I think along the way, one of the things that probably happened was, Tony Khan wanted people who were experienced in professional wrestling. And for the last like 20 years, you want people who are experienced in producing big time professional wrestling on American TV. You got one major place in WWE. You had the opportunity brought in like Raphael Murphy from Impact and all that stuff. But you also had, like the bulk of them are going to come from WWE, the Pat Bucks of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And Pat Buck is a great producer. Like he's like you said, right?
Absolutely.
But at the same time, right? I think it was one of those things where he felt like he probably needed to bring on people who were experienced, and some of it was going to work out, some of it wasn't. And again, it was a growing company. I think this is your year. If you're AEW, work out those kinks. If you don't, I think the people are hyperbolic when they say AEW is going to go out of business or whatever. Like AEW is a very successful company. Like they're going to be fine. It would take a literal catastrophe for that company to go out of business, right?
It would have to take Tony Khan not wanting to do it anymore.
Exactly. It was like
I just want to point that out for the people watching. AEW within 5 years is still technically not profitable. I want to make that clear. I don't have a concern that the company will die because they're not profitable. That's the reason why wrestling needed another billionaire to get involved with wrestling and actually hold it down, because you're not going to make money for the first few years, which is why it's super intriguing to see the TV deal, which I do want to talk about that in a little bit. Yeah. But it is expected when they get that TV deal, they'll be profitable. But as long as Tony Khan still loves wrestling, this company doesn't go away.
Yeah. And I don't think there's ever going to be a time where Tony stops loving wrestling.
Have you seen this guy on Twitter? Of course.
Yeah, there's never going to be a time.
This man loves wrestling like nothing else. Like he will.
AEW is going to be around. Everybody relax.
Well, see, that's the good thing, though. I did want to point that out, too. Scott D'Amore, Triple H, and Tony Khan are all three guys who absolutely love wrestling and have loved wrestling forever.
It's healthy.
And, I know it's a little bit different for Scott D'Amore because he doesn't own Anthem, but Anthem owns TNA and they put him in Power, and that's the reason why they're still around. So, the good thing is with wrestling companies, like I don't know for a fact, I can't speak for Ted Turner, but I don't believe Ted Turner actually loved wrestling. I think Ted Turner loved the idea of making money off of it.
Hey, you know what Ted Turner loved? Ted Turner loved wrestling, all right? He loved wrestling.
Oh, wrestling.
And he said he loved baiting Vince, all right? That's what he was in the wrestling business.
Beating Vince McMahon.
I think there's a very clear difference between when people compare AEW to WCW. I think that's full of shit, because you look at a guy who is willing to lose money for 5 years. And, after the TV deal, who knows what happens with that? Maybe Tony Khan doesn't get a massive one. I still think this guy will keep it holding it down. Will that mean growing pains and cutting talent or, maybe making different financial decisions? 100%. I don't think Tony Khan's going to be an idiot with his money because there's no way that he would be. But I'm just saying that for those who don't know what we're talking about, that's, when people say AEW is dying, just understand it's probably some bot on Twitter because it's the company. People will talk ratings, they'll talk ticket sales, they'll talk all this stuff. But if Tony Khan wants to produce this from QT Marshall's Nightmare Factory like he did during COVID, he could. If that's how much he loves wrestling and that's how bad they need to stick around, I think Tony Khan would be the kind of guy to do it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
agree.
And like again, the WCW thing, like we could talk about like for 3 hours why like AEW is
sure,
not
man.
WCW. Like
Yeah.
that's just it like it's an easy, like that's like one of those low hanging fruits, like an easy thing to talk about. Like when you either don't know what you're talking about or you just want to troll people online. Like it is what it is. The like interesting thing I think for AEW in 2024, I don't know. I'm not trying to hijack the show, but I do have a question that I would love to get y'all.
You're good, brother. You guys, hey, go off. We're just chilling, shooting the shit.
Hey,
There's been a lot of talking about the bidding war of 2024.
Yeah.
A lot of free agents. Tony Khan has said he's going to be quote unquote aggressive in free agency. That's his plan, right?
Yeah.
We already know like there's plans at least for Mercedes to eventually come in whenever that may be. And we know like there's a few other free agents that are, pending in 2024. I believe Drew's contract is up, Drew McIntyre. Becky Lynch and Seth, even though I don't expect either of them to leave WWE. And then like you also have Okada out there. Like, I don't know. How like when you hear Tony Khan say aggressive, right? Do you think like, of course he's gonna make an offer to like everyone. Like he's just gonna do it, and whether or not they want to come. But like, how many of these big time like free agents do you think he can actually land? Or should he land? I'm looking at you, Ango. Should he land?
Okay, I'll answer this first, and I'll make it brief. Sometimes I'm so passionate where I just keep talking, so I apologize for that, guys.
Well, it's your show. Go
You're
for it.
good,
But
man. It's yours.
I'll say this, and I said this with Mercedes. When you have a high caliber talent of Mercedes, I don't give a fuck what the circumstances are. You go for it. 100%. I don't care how shitty your company is. I don't care how great your company is. When you have the money and there's a high caliber free agent, you go for it. So the Drew McIntyres of the world, the Becky Lynches, the Seth Rollins, not saying they're going to leave, but you never know, right? They can always use AEW to leverage more money from WWE as well, which is why I love having two major companies. What I would say is this: Tony Khan, if it's a major free agent name like Mercedes, I think you go for it. If it's Drew McIntyre, I think you go for it. However, you got to free up the cap space. I feel like that's where you need to look at your roster and see who is genuinely not happy being there and initiate that conversation of saying, hey, you don't want to be here, we'll let you go. Because here's the thing. You sign these people, and thankfully wrestling is producing some really big names, and there's going to be even bigger free agents next year and the year after and stuff. I don't want to see them just keep adding to their roster just for the sake of, oh, it's a big free agent and they should go for them. That's my big thing. I just feel like it's one of those things with AEW. Who was it? Maybe you guys saw it. Eric Bischoff or somebody was saying like, oh, Mercedes is not going to be a big deal for AEW.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to it in detail, and I'm not going to say he's right or wrong because there's a chance that he could be right. You know what I'm saying? Technically there is a chance. But what I would say is she's a big enough free agent to the point where you pay her the money, you bring her in, you make her the star of the show. How can you do that without hurting the up-and-comers that you've been building up, like the Julia Harts and the Sky Blues, right? That's a challenge that Tony Khan will have. And in the past, I don't think Tony Khan has done a good job with that challenge. But it's still not enough for me to say don't sign them. Just like if MJF is a free agent, I don't think he is. But if he is, WWE, regardless of how many top stars they're producing at the top of the card right now, you bring in MJF. The same reason why you brought in CM Punk. You do it. Hopefully that kind of explains my answer. I don't know, Billy, if you have something different to say or But
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, I think I just have something to add on. It goes down to it goes back to what we just talked about a little bit ago about the idea of what are some of the problems. I think for me, again, as a fan, now knowing what I know about how Tony has brought these guys in, and guys and girls, I should say, how he's brought them in and how they've been booked and how they've been overshadowed. And let's be real here. I think it's fair to say, like, we look at a guy like Andrade, right?
Mhm.
Who was very much overshadowed by a lot of just maybe not the best booking in the world, to where it tells me, hey, I don't know if if in my heart right now, I've said it from the beginning. I want him to sign Sasha. I agree. I don't think you missed that opportunity, right? But you need to set a statement with Mercedes that, hey, when she gets here, I'm going to show you that not only is she about to be a huge deal, but so is the Julia Hart, right? And so is the Chris Statlander.
Mhm.
That's what I want before you go out and you sign somebody the caliber of a Drew McIntyre, or like you said earlier, Seth Rollins. I don't think that'll happen, but just under the circumstance that maybe something like that does happen, show me that it's not going to affect the rest of the company. Because sadly, that's been something that has happened. Now, I will say that even with like somebody like Miro, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of been fixed a little bit, and you're starting to see the fixing. I just need to make sure it's consistent. So that's kind of all I have to say to that.
Can I ask you guys a quick question?
Yeah.
And I'm only asking because it kind of plays into what I'm going to say. Do you guys think AEW has utilized Saraya correctly?
No.
Billy, what about
Mm-mm.
you? Yeah, no.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
So not to discredit AEW, but I can understand why people have this argument. They're on the side of the argument where it's like, oh, bloated roster. They're going to make a big signing and then there's no momentum. Like, I understand why people say that because, and I understand with Saraya, you got to kind of play it safe, obviously, due to the injury, the health concern stuff. But my biggest fear, and I said this so long ago, was with AEW. It's like if you make too many announcements or too many surprise signings and you don't necessarily catapult them to the top, or you don't necessarily do something with them that makes them feel like a big deal, the next big signing, there's going to be a lot of people who don't care because they've seen it happen so many times where it wasn't necessarily capitalized off of. And I don't think that happens with Mercedes. I don't think that happens with Deonna Purrazzo, to be honest. I think those are two very key signings for the women's division. I don't see that as an issue. I actually look at them bringing legitimacy to their women's division. But let's say you factor in Drew, Seth, Becky, maybe Brock Lesnar, whoever. I don't know. I'm just throwing out names. I don't know.
The New Day.
The New Day, right? Like, I always believed Xavier Woods and Kofi could be AEW bound one day. I believe that one day they could be a huge signing for AEW because of the Young Bucks and Kenny, right? That's always a possibility. But that's hard to get excited about sometimes when I see the current state of tag team wrestling not necessarily being consistent. Makes sense?
Yeah.
I think and I agree with like a lot of what you guys said. I think 2024 is going to be Tony Khan's like biggest test as a booker, just because like as a booker, as a businessman, as the main head honcho of AEW, like this is his most important year.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna have to put it all together from a business standpoint, winning the perception war, trying to sign some big key free agents that are going to hopefully bring some eyeballs and change the perception of AEW, much like it did in 2021, right? Like when Brian, Adam Cole, Bebe, and Punk signed, it was a big deal and it brought people in.
Yep.
So from that standpoint, and then also after you sign them, all right, next Wednesday, next Saturday, what the hell are you gonna do? Like, and it's his job to put it all together, right? Like we can all sit here and like sit here and say what we would want to happen. At the end of the day, there's really like he has a committee of people he works with, right? There's one guy who's calling the shots as far as like final say over a lot of these things, and it's Tony Khan. So, and that's why I think having the structures in place, having systems in place for a company that is upsizing it to the point where AEW is and has is so important. Like they're not the startup anymore. They're not the mom and pop. It's not I love the saying all friends wrestling. It's not all friends wrestling anymore. It's like it's a major wrestling promotion in North America, major wrestling promotion across the world. You at some point you got to start treating it like it. I hope they do, and I think if they do, you know, we're not gonna like everything on the show, but we're gonna like a hell of a lot more stuff on that show.
What do you guys think? Just to kind of throw it out there too, but Mercedes, obviously she didn't debut tonight. I see why people are kind of weird with the whole Mercedes thing. Like, oh, it wouldn't be the right place for her to debut at Daly's Place. To me, Daly's Place will always be the home of AEW.
Yeah, that was like the perfect time.
The eight women tag match, like it would have been actually really significant for those women to be looking at Mercedes on the ramp.
Yeah,
you know. But let me ask you, what do you guys think about this potential possibility? I'm not saying it's happening, but just to kind of throw it out there. Impact keeps throwing out this Worlds Collide thing, right? What will happen when this person shows up? Worlds Collide when this new signing shows up, whatever. We don't know if it's a knockout. We don't know who's the signing. But what do you guys think about the potential possibility of them getting into a partnership again with AEW, doing a talent share where Mercedes shows up at Hard to Kill, but they introduce her as, I don't know if I would have them introduce her as an AEW wrestler because she obviously hasn't been revealed for AEW. That wouldn't make sense. But what if they have her at Hard to Kill and then Mercedes shows up at the next Dynamite? Like, what do you guys think? Like, do you guys think like there could be a possibility where maybe AEW gets to the point where instead of just making big signings exclusively to them, they start really partnering with these companies? Maybe they do like a dual contract. I don't know. Just kind of throwing something out there. I don't know how it would work business-wise, but I wouldn't be opposed to that because, you know, with the working relationships, it is a little bit more difficult with Japan, the time zone difference. But with TNA, right, it's not an issue.
So call me crazy. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off.
I'll be quick. I'll just say this. I think, like, I think there's a world where that could work, but it's also a world where TNA didn't already build this up as like a major free agent signing for them. I think at this point, like anything less than like this is someone who is exclusive to TNA or, you know, a major TNA signing. Anything like less than that, it's gonna hurt TNA, I think, a little bit, honestly. Like, of course, having Mercedes on your show is gonna be a boost no matter what. But I don't know. I would have a hard time, right? Like justifying, you know, building up this major free agent signing, you know, for TNA and then being like, oh, that's actually a major free agent signing for AEW.
Yeah.
You know, I just like, you're TNA, right? You're always going to be like one step below AEW, like, or at least right now, you're going to be one step below AEW in the perception, right, of professional wrestling companies. But like, you know, you have to also like, you have to look out for your own. I like the idea in theory. I just don't know how it would work in practice, and you know, not like also hurt a little bit of credibility, because I feel like you're gonna have like some fans who are like, what the hell? Like, you build up this free agent signing for another company? Like, come on. But that's just me.
So go ahead, Billy, and then I'm gonna follow up with that question. But go ahead.
Yeah. So call me crazy, call me absolutely insane.
You're insane.
I know, right? So I believe, and the more I'm paying attention to social media, right? I think Mercedes is actually in TNA.
I don't think so.
I think I do. Yeah. The reason
Really,
why
do you know that I don't.
I don't know if I could be shooting from the ass here, you know. I don't know.
Okay.
Being honest here. Being honest. I don't know 100% obviously, but I look at something like on Twitter where she does the 3 H's right during Christmas time. And then she posts that picture on her story with kind of Triple H kind of lingering over while she's sitting in the ring. And then today she's in the airport, right?
Yeah.
And she's really playing into it. It's as simple as, what if I played you this whole time? Call me crazy. That's a thought.
If there was a person who would do it, it would be Mercedes. I'm sure she's having a
Absolutely.
blast. She's listening to podcasts and Twitter and seeing what people are saying. She's having a blast and enjoying this. I don't think it's out of the realm that she goes to TNA because unlike these, there's a lot of people in the IWC, and I don't even know if I would call them people because I do think there's just a lot of bots on Twitter. Honestly, I really do. I think there's a lot of disingenuine takes on Twitter. A lot of people will sit there and say TNA doesn't have the money. That's debunked. We know they could have afforded Ospreay, Punk, and Mercedes. That's not an issue.
Yep.
And I don't think it's crazy for Mercedes to go to TNA. In fact, if there was, for me as somebody, and I've told Billy this, Omer, I don't know if you've ever seen me talk about this, but I've said the reason why I wanted Will Ospreay or Punk to go to TNA is because they need that one big name that carries the brand. Kenny does it for AEW, Roman does it for WWE. TNA needs that one. So I would never be opposed to Mercedes being the one for TNA, especially because they have great history. It makes it different, but also they're the one company who's nailed Knockouts booking 100% consistently every week. Not another company has done it like them. I don't give a fuck what anybody else says. So it is possible. I still think that the Mercedes to AEW thing is, I think there's too many reporters saying that she's expected to go to AEW. Does that guarantee it? No, but I feel like they'd be putting their reputation on the line for something so silly. I don't think they would do that.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that you mentioned, the fact that signing a big name free agent like a Punk hypothetically, or Mercedes or whatever would have been great for TNA. I think it would have been great for wrestling.
Yeah.
Like in this weird tribalism of AEW versus WWE or whatever, and I think people have lost like the meaning behind when people say like AEW saved professional wrestling. Like it's a little hyperbolic, but there is some truth to it. But the truth isn't that like AEW, the company, saved it. It's the existence of another company. It's parity in professional wrestling is what, really boosted professional wrestling. And what I believe right now is the most like exciting era, at least that I've lived through. Right. And I think like what we should want, if you're a fan of professional wrestling, and like there's going to be fans who are just fans of AEW, just fans of WWE, that's great. But if you're a fan, if you call yourself a fan of professional wrestling, you better be sitting there and like hoping the TNA at some point like does sign and land a major free agent, because that would be good for professional wrestling because it boosts up TNA. It allows them to do better business. And I'm not saying they're going to be a major player like with AEW, but the bigger like these companies are, like the bigger the third company is, the better I think professional wrestling is, because there's more out there for the fans. And that's what this is all about. That's what all of this has always been about. Like we can sit here and talk about and analyze all this stuff, but the fact that we're sitting here and able to talk about AEW on a Wednesday night, something unfathomable 5 years ago, like I want to be doing that on Thursday nights for Impact. I want to be doing that. Hell, MLW lands a TV deal in like a few years. Want to be doing that then too.
So I'm glad you said that, because just peel back the curtain a little bit. If it wasn't for AEW being around, I don't know if I'd be a full-time content creator. Full-time. I don't think people realize, first and foremost, before AEW started, I covered AEW because I was in desperate need of something new to watch, first and foremost. That was the big thing. Like, forget about you. At that time, I wasn't doing YouTube full-time. I was just making videos here and there, kind of just getting back into it again. And I remember hearing whispers because of my real life job that, hey, there might be a new wrestling company and they're going to Warner Bros. And I'm like, oh shit, I should make a video on this. And that literally is what kind of catapulted my growth as a content creator. I think a lot of people forgot that. Like early stages, nobody was talking about what this company could be. I remember talking about it. Then the name came out with the trademarks. Then Tony Khan's name got involved. And then before the TV deal was announced, I was telling people, hey, it sounds like TNT and TBS could be the big front runner. Dude, it changed a lot for me, because as a content creator at that time, I was just doing it part-time. And it was giving me, because I took such a big break from YouTube for a couple of years, it gave me a good chance to be like, okay, I actually enjoy this and I could actually talk about it because I enjoy it. And I like what's happening in this industry now. Because what people don't really realize is the OG angle made more money from covering TNA Impact than I did WWE back in the day, 2014 to 2016, 2017, whatever, back in the day. But then what really happened was AEW's growth. And then September 8th, 2021, I was sitting in a suite at AEW All Out. And I had some very good, healthy, beautiful conversations with some very important people in the industry that looked at me and said, "Why aren't you doing this full time?" And mind you, that was at an AEW show. And I said, "You're right." I got on that airplane. I looked at my cousin and I said, "Bro, I don't talk me out of it. I'm quitting my job. I'm going full time." And he looked at me. He's like, "What?" I'm like, "I'll tell you more about it when we land." And I was like, I'm writing my resignation letter. I came home and I told my family after I wrote the resignation letter and sent it to my boss. I said, "I'm going full time." And that was 2021. So I've already had a couple of years of AEW. So people got to remember, I was all in on the idea of AEW, and I did enjoy WWE a little bit, but I needed more alternatives. I needed more wrestling because WWE wasn't really fulfilling that 100% in its entirety. What was
Yeah.
really cool as a fan, I watch TNA and I watch MLW and I watch all these companies. AEW comes around, I enjoy them, and I see WWE, and then WWE hits this like weird little spot where it's like the Vince McMahon allegations. And WWE wasn't too bad before that happened. It was a lot better than 2019, but it wasn't as complete as it is today. Like I feel today's WWE is just way more logical, way more, there's a lot more purpose to the things happening on TV. I love it. But at that time it wasn't too bad. But I remember thinking, I'm like, fuck, like I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I haven't really thought about like what would happen if WWE goes away or what happens if AEW goes away. You don't think those things. That's why it's so important that all these wrestling companies are healthy. Now that I've given everybody a little bit of context to everything, this is the reason why I will 100% never be biased. One, I don't get paid to be biased, but I genuinely want the wrestling industry to be better. It's to my standards. I don't care what other people want. And that's not to be like a piece of shit or anything like that. I'm just talking about for myself because that's the only experience or only process, like thinking process I can share with people is how I see it. I could be understanding of why they do things. I always am. I'll justify anything that Vince, Triple H, Tony Khan, Scott D'Amore does. I can justify it from like business stuff, but from like a personal experience, I share that because that's how I envision wrestling. Never said it's the best, never said it's the worst, but I've realized, especially with wrestling, I see Tony Khan on Twitter. I see MLW with these lawsuits to WWE. I see TNA rebranding and all these things that are happening in the industry. It's so chaotic. But the best part about wrestling is as at least it's not just WWE. So if TNA, I know it's easy for people to troll and say, "Oh, TNA can't sign this person. Oh, look at the ratings, 70,000 people, 100,000 people, this and that." I look at these people and I'm thinking, what is wrong with you?
That's how
What
a
is your
company
issue with
builds.
this company? You saw a number on Twitter of 120,000 viewers and you're talking shit about it, but it's TNA. But ROH has less than 30,000 people subscribed to their network, and you're not willing to talk about that because you just have some issue with TNA from when Dixie Carter ran the company. I can tell you off the rip, this is not genuine fan. This is not a genuine fan base, and I'm very genuine, and Omer's very genuine, and Billy's very genuine, and there's a lot of other content creators that I see that are very genuine. Unfortunately, we're just content creators. We're not going to move the needle for companies, and we're not looking to. But what I want is for people to enjoy wrestling like I enjoy wrestling. And, I'll just kind of leave it at that, man. It's fucking crazy, though, looking at
Yeah.
2024. Omer's right. This is the year for Tony Khan to get it right. And I hope he does. And that's why I hate the Twitter shit. That's why I hate the tweeting and the constant media scrums and the constant drama and the constant talking about everything else. Motherfucker, you have the chance to have one of the best wrestling TV shows every week with this insane roster that you have. I want to see you laser focused because when you do it good, you do it fucking great. This is why I don't want to see Triple H being interrupted by Vince McMahon because I saw Raw after WrestleMania. I saw what Vince McMahon did to that shit. And then I see the following week and I see the following weeks where Triple H is back running at 100% complete control. And I'm like, motherfucker, this guy knows what he's doing. It's such a crazy wrestling industry and there's so much shit happening, but that's why I love wrestling because there is a lot of chaos and it is fun. And, at the end of the day, it's so much better when everybody's good. And also, too, for the whole tribalism thing, I'll address this one time. People who say I'm tribalist or biased, I'll leave one thing with you guys. If you actually listen to the fucking words I speak, and I know it's funny because I seen a comment on Omer's video one day. Actually, I was looking at it and somebody was saying he was like biased towards AEW or some shit. Whenever people say this, just understand that's the easiest way for you to troll people is by calling someone biased, because it's a 4-letter fucking word. If you listen to the words that people are speaking, you'll understand that most people genuinely enjoy wrestling and you do not enjoy wrestling. You just love being a fucking keyboard warrior. You should probably fucking log off.
And
So
that's why youtube.com/Ango is your destination for pro wrestling.
I like that.
Omer,
I like that.
Omer, I actually want to give, because we're getting personal here, right? And it now feels like we're coming at Omer and we're telling him all about these personal stories, right? I actually have a personal story myself that many people don't know. And you've introduced me to your channel, and I'm very, very thankful for this, and I'm very thankful for you guys. So the reason why I'm actually very critical towards Tony Khan in AEW is because there was a time where AEW actually meant the world to me. And you're probably thinking like, oh, that's super dramatic. Oh, blah, blah, blah. So I spent some time in Alabama at the time with some family. And I had a conversation with an important person in my life, that important person being my stepfather. Sorry if I get really deep here, but I just really want to make this point very clear. My stepfather my stepfather was a really big fan of professional wrestling, and he was a, Attitude Era kid. So he watched the Attitude Era and he loved that time. He actually, me and him, we spoke while I was in Alabama, and we had talked about wrestling. And at the time, the big hot topic was CM Punk coming back. And CM Punk, if you guys don't know, I've said it on the channel a couple times, is very, very important to me. And I have a very big bias towards CM Punk. And it's not because of who he is, and has everything to do with the last conversation that I actually had with my stepfather. And the last conversation that we actually had was that, excuse me, I'm sorry. The last conversation that we had was it was a joke. I was under full belief that CM Punk would come back to wrestling, and my stepfather, he couldn't fathom the fact. And at the time, again, I was in Alabama, and it was about 2 weeks before CM Punk made his actual return that my stepdad actually passed away. And I want to, again, the personal side of this. I'm not gonna do the teary-eyed thing, but the personal side of this is that's why I'm critical towards Tony Khan. That's why I want to see this company do good, because that company made me feel something, and I love them, and I still love them to this day. So if you want the real answer on why I don't stop watching AEW, there's your answer. It's that it holds a place in my heart. Sorry about the emotional side.
That's as real as it gets, bro. That's as real as it gets. And I know this, obviously, based on personal conversations with you. And it takes a lot to obviously share it with the viewers. So I definitely appreciate it. But it's true, man. That's what wrestling does to people. It's not just it's a TV show, but I think for a lot of wrestling fans in general, people who watch wrestling understand it, and people who don't, they'll never understand it. But look how wrestling changed my life, dude. Billy, this really changed my life. So why would I be biased towards one company or the other? Fucking, I was working 60, 70 hours like a slave, the most unhealthiest you could ever be in life. And then it's like, dude, I'm going to make videos full time. I believe in myself. And thankfully, like, we all have different stories, but that's the beauty of it, man.
That's the most beautiful thing about professional wrestling, is that we all have a different story to tell. Whew.
What in the hell is this?
Man, what in the world?
What happened?
Oh my. There's some spamming going on.
Yeah, don't worry. I took that off.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I think. Let me see. Let me just make sure.
The bots are in the chat.
Oh yeah, the bots have made it, dude.
We hate the we hate the bots, but we love professional wrestling. I think
Right,
that's definitely that's I think a perfect way to put a cap on like this part of the conversation. Like, man, no matter what, like at least for me, like professional wrestling's always been there, right? You have a bad day, you're watching Raw on Monday, or you're watching SmackDown when I was younger, or you're tuning into Dynamite, like, right? Like, that's the best part about like being a fan of like anything. Forget professional wrestling. That's the best part about being a fan, right? You got something to look forward to. You got something that's going to lift you up. It's a distraction from the realities of the world. And at its most perfect, most beautiful, it is something that you can cherish. The memories you can cherish for the rest of your life, right? And like that's just, I don't know. If I like, people ask me all the time, like I have friends who like they see my channel or whatever, they're like, that's really cool, but like you like wrestling? I never like pegged you for like a professional wrestling like fan. I was like, yeah, man, because like I don't like make, I mean, look, here's the thing. Do I make professional wrestling my life? Yes and no. Because I talk about it a lot. I love it. There's like, I probably think about professional wrestling like more than like most other things, like if you're gonna like categorize it. But at the same time, right? Like I also like know like it's something that is meant to make me happy. And that's like the mindset I've always tried to watch professional wrestling at. And again, you're not going to like everything, but I think that once you find something that, you love, or a wrestler that you really love, like hold on to it, like watch it, become a fan. Like that's why you should always support wrestlers, not companies. You should want companies to do better, but support your favorite wrestlers, support the matches you want to see, support the type of wrestling you want to watch. That's what being a professional wrestling fan, in my view, is all about. Yeah. Be positive.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love it. And you know why I love it? Because as somebody who has spent a shit ton of money on wrestling.
Yep.
Hey, man, way too much.
Being there for the first Double or Nothing, being there for the first All Out, being there for all of these first time events. Those are things, man, you never forget. And what's actually cool is like some of my closest friends and cousins, like we have a group chat about wrestling and we talk about wrestling. And it's amazing that we have gotten to the point where we've done these trips together, and we've had incredible conversations about it and incredible experiences going to wrestling trips and like AEW and WWE. And it's so funny because looking back at it, if you go back and look at my old videos, I'm like, man, forget about creative for a second. There's not a chance that you spend money on an AEW event and don't walk out happy. Like, forget about booking, forget about creative, forget about everything, forget about how long it is. It's a fucking amazing time. And for a while, WWE events kind of felt like a drag. And then I would go to WWE events and I would tell people the same thing. I'm like, bro, I don't know what it is about being there live. I don't know how it came across on TV, but it was worth every penny. Going to SummerSlam experience. SummerSlam, people were critical of it, and I was like, fuck, this was amazing. Like, wrestling is fun, man. You enjoy wrestling, and that's the beauty of it. I did want to talk to you guys about some. Oh my god,
man!
He's gone. Wait,
he's gone. He's gone. He's gone.
I've been doing it over and over and over again. I don't know, man.
That's funny.
How embarrassing, dude. How embarrassing.
I don't know. I think that's just, I don't know if that's really him either, the dude from Twitter, but whatever. Nonetheless, there's a couple things I want to bring up to you guys, but we did get a super chat from Tattoo Nick for $19.99. He says, man, bro, you are fired up today. It's nice to see true passion for wrestling, no matter company you follow. Keep up the good work. Tattoo Nick is one of the OGs. I appreciate that super chat a lot, brother. It's good to hear from you again. It's been a minute, so we definitely appreciate you stopping by and showing love. And thank you for that. Fellas, I want to bring up something. We talked a little bit earlier about some good, some bad, some things that they can do differently, things like that. But just since we have all of us here, I want to talk to you guys about the TV deal.
Okay.
And I'm super intrigued by this because there's tons of rumors that WWE could seriously potentially land on Warner Bros. Discovery. There's tons of rumors and stuff that WWE could go on Amazon Prime. There's tons of rumors that Warner Bros. and Paramount might merge. the TV landscape's going to change. The NBA rights might not even be retained by Warner Bros., which obviously frees up money for potentially AEW, which is significant. There's a lot of ways that this can go. Where do you guys think is the likely landing spot for AEW with the new TV deal? And what is something that you want to see changed when they get this new TV deal? We'll go one by one. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, for me, it depends, right? Because it seems like every day there's something new with these TV deals coming out, right? Because the other day it was Amazon Prime. Now we're back to, and again, these are all just people, speculating. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I do think that WWE themselves will actually land on Prime. I think Prime is really invested in the idea of having more live sports, especially because they just recently, signed, they're doing the whole NFL thing.
Yeah.
I think there is interest in having that. Now, to say as a wrestling fan, does that kind of suck a little bit? Yes, right? Because now I'm subscribed to Peacock, and now also I'm subscribed to Amazon Prime. Does that suck a little bit? Yes, but I guess I get free shipping out of it.
It's true.
Yeah. But I do think that AEW will end up re-signing and with Warner Bros. And I do think that they're going to land, pretty decently on their feet. I think recently, as the year has progressed, and we're only 2 weeks in, but as it's progressed, they have shown that, Warner Bros. Is promoting them a little bit more and putting them out there a little bit more. But I do believe that right now, that's where we stand. I think Raw ends up with Amazon Prime. I think AEW stays with Warner Bros. And some things that I'd like to see change, obviously, in the WWE side of things, I would love to see the set design change a little bit. I'd like to see some new sets come out during these TV deals. And for AEW, I think it just kind of falls back, what's going on. Oh, am I freezing?
No, you're just like super pixelated. You've been like that for 20 minutes. I just didn't want to say anything. But
no, you're supposed to say something.
No, man, you guys are talking and chatting, and it's all good. Tell Billy to get off AOL.
That's crazy.
Not gonna lie, that kind of popped me.
We hear the
crazy.
dial up in the background. Why you got your phone plugged in, bro? Like, unplug your phone.
Oh, not the phone. I'm using the Elgato face cam. This is a good camera.
It looks like it's a connection thing. I'm not too sure, but either way, I'm able to hear you, and I think everybody is able to hear you. I think it's just pixelated.
Okay. Well, that's all right then. But yeah, that's my belief.
But anyways, I heard your point. Omer, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So as far as like where these people land, like where these companies land on TV deals, like I'm not gonna pretend like I got insider knowledge. I don't. But like from like just like viewing like the landscape, I think it makes sense for Warner Brothers to retain AEW.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that could be a wild card, and the timing of this really doesn't work out, just because like I think the NBA deal is like up like later on, but is like the NBA deal, because like if for whatever reason we learn that the NBA isn't retained by Warner Brothers, I think Warner Brothers might have a decision to make as far as like, okay, we just lost this like big draw, like this massive, not only like a draw, like a ratings draw, but like a draw of like, hey, we're TNT and we are the home of the NBA on TNT. You don't have that anymore. Okay, what are you going to do to, keep up that perception that you are a major primetime network? I think there you could see maybe a little bit more interest in potentially bringing over Raw. I still think it makes more sense from a business standpoint to like retain AEW, all their shows from a value standpoint. Like it just makes a lot more sense. That being said, I do think like the NBA thing is going to be the real key point to watch. as far as what I'm looking for in 2020 or in AEW in this new TV deal, Angle, you know this. I'm not a hard man to please when it comes to professional wrestling. I just want to be able to watch shit that I like. So if it means you get the back catalog, all the AEW stuff on Max, or I get to pay like whatever, like $10 for each pay-per-view on Max or whatever, that needs to be a part of this deal. Because as a person who's watched AEW since the beginning, I've been there for the ups, the downs, and everything in between, the good, the bad, and the elite, right? But one thing that I really want is for them get off of Bleacher Report. Big love to the people over at Bleacher Report. Great writing, really shitty streaming. So I want that. I want like the live pay-per-views to move over to Max, just because I think like there's more of an emphasis in the company, like in general on that streaming part. But also I just want to be able to watch like past AEW shows or past AEW matches like I would in WWE or like I would for ROH, you know? So that's what I want. Will it happen? We'll see, but
I think it's a super interesting time because for a long time, before there was ever talks of Tony Khan even talking about streaming, the play has always been streaming. Just so people understand, it's always been the play. You can't do it in the early years because you got to build library. The WWE pretty much changed the way sports and entertainment companies operate because there's so much value in the streaming rights. That's WWE showed everybody by getting those USA and Fox deals. Like, you got to be chasing the TV. And actually, I would say if I'm sure Tony Khan would have started a wrestling company either way. But as much as I believe Tony Khan loves wrestling, I think Tony Khan loves business and says, man, I love wrestling and I see what WWE is getting paid for this and I got billions of dollars and I could invest in it. I think the TV deals are a big part of the reason why he really moved the needle on pitching to Warner, right? He got a very credible TV deal at the start. So what makes it fun is I don't think there's actually one bad TV deal that's on the table for any of these companies. Like I definitely disagreed with you when you said AEW shouldn't or Warner Bros should take AEW first before WWE. I don't agree with that. Like you were saying, you think for a business decision, it would make more sense for them to go with AEW instead of WWE.
mm-hmm.
If they lose the NBA rights, then you go 100% for WWE because it's the biggest entity out of the two, right? But what I love so much about this is for AEW or WWE, whether it's FX, Disney, right? Disney FX or whatever other properties, ESPN, because Disney owns everything. Whether it's those, whether it's Warner Bros, whether it's Paramount who merges with Warner Bros, whatever it may be, the cool thing about this is that there's going to be a shit ton of content because these companies have presented themselves as valuable TV rights. So while people complain about TV ratings and stuff like that, I don't have those conversations with people. I don't discuss ratings with people because these people don't even know how to tell you how they're even calculated. They don't even know how any of it works. I came from a background where I was very familiar with TV ratings and understanding the importance of TV ratings. And I remember a very specific conversation that I had with an individual. They said very specifically to me, they said, listen, TV ratings, people will talk about them. Nobody will know anything about them. And they will just use that to sway their argument, whichever way helps their favor. And the reality is, you can have 1 trillion viewers, but if your CPMs are ass, you ain't making money. Your trillion viewers don't mean shit. This is why YouTube subscribers don't matter because there are subscribers. There are channels with much more subscribers than me.
My man's getting into the deep with it.
And I'm just saying, I'm just saying that's the industry. I predict 2 things. I predict that AEW lands on a streaming deal with ROH. The ROH library, the AEW library, Collision, and Rampage. I do think they're all packaged into one. I don't think it happens with Warner Bros. Discovery. If I was making a prediction, I would go as far as saying that WWE lands Raw on TNT or TBS, whichever one. I would also go as far as saying that when WWE's deal with Peacock is over, WWE shifts their library to Warner. I think it shifts. WWE pay-per-views and everything goes to Warner. They do the streaming, stuff like that. But I think AEW lands a streaming deal with a company nobody's expecting, and I think it's with ESPN Plus. I think AEW pay-per-views move to ESPN Plus.
That
I
is in
think
play. Yep.
I think AEW
I like that.
definitely. I don't think people are talking enough about this, but I think they're on ESPN Plus for their pay-per-views. And then I think Dynamite and Collision, which this could get tricky because of ESPN1, ESPN2, and ESPN3. They would never be the main priority over other sports. But I
Right.
do think we would see where they have a time slot that's guaranteed, but it might not be Wednesdays. You know, it would depend on how they go about it. But I could see ESPN building that library with AEW. And the reason why is because we're starting to see, nobody talks about this either, but Apple is very interested in acquiring ESPN. So what would happen is ESPN, if acquired by Apple, if Disney offloads it to Apple, Apple brings in ESPN, ESPN Plus, and merges it into Apple Plus, Apple TV Plus. And then that's where more value comes into AEW's hands. And I think AEW would be far more likely long term to be with Apple because of that acquiring of ESPN than WWE, because WWE would be on Warner. And I think that's fucking amazing for both companies.
Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
be cool. The thing is, like, they would have to move off of Wednesdays because ESPN does NBA on Wednesdays.
Yes.
And I think like part of this is like one of the weird things like that I think Tony Khan also like needs to let go of is like not competing with the NFL or whatever. I'm just
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I get Sundays. No, you shouldn't like I get Sunday. Don't have a weekly TV show on Sundays. That's fine. Mondays too. That's fine. Thursday nights is right there. I'm just saying, like,
Right. Yeah, they exist.
it's right there. I like I don't see like I watch Thursday Night Football every now and then. Love Al Michaels. Love the music is great. The best music in the NFL. But I'm like, all right, guys, like you could hypothetically you could do a show on there. Collision could be on Thursdays, and there's no reason not to do it, and it would probably draw a better rating than it does on Saturday. Like, so I hear you there. Like, I think there, as long as AEW is flexible, like the ESPN thing, I think is definitely in play. It slipped my mind even. But I think the reason, like again, I think with WWE, they are always going to take whatever the best deal for them is, right?
Yeah.
And no matter what, like the money is going to be important, but the other wild card that I forgot to mention, and I mentioned this in like a previous video I did talking about this, was if WWE feels like they can get comparable money and also like, for lack of a better term, that stick it to AEW, but like in their view, like, you know, take AEW down, make them step back, make them like regroup, rethink their entire strategy, like by taking like the TNT TV contract. I totally think that would be an incentive. I think it's not the incentive that people online think it is, where it's like, yeah, they're gonna do it just to stick it AEW. I'm like, yeah, it's like a pro, but the money has to be there. I think people like need to realize it's at the end of the day, all this is about the money.
100%. And it's the same for
Yeah.
Tony Khan. No matter how much he loves that relationship,
Exactly.
Tony Khan, why do you think? I think he got into the business because he saw TV rights are astronomically high for live sports and entertainment. And you know who else saw this coming? Me. 2017, 2018.
Why did you start a wrestling company, Ango?
Because well, that's actually a funny story. We could talk about that. I almost threw my own event this year. 2020, and then I almost did it last year. We could talk about that in a second. But
Yeah, do that.
2017, 2018, there was a lot of talks about TV deals becoming more valuable because of the shift towards streaming. And the thing was, at the time, Warner Bros. Discovery was under AT&T, and CNN was under AT&T, and they had all these properties and stuff. And basically, what AT&T was trying to do at that time was trying to incentivize customers. Unlimited plan, you get HBO. Well, the thing is, they were giving out so many free HBO signups, and it wasn't generating money, but they were spending a lot of money to acquire intellectual properties. And this was at a very interesting time, because when they started acquiring intellectual properties and we started hearing about these things, I remember going into it thinking, oh my God, these wrestling companies have a chance to move in and swoop up a lot of money. And you start to see that happen. And what's really fascinating about that in general was look at traditional TV and look at what these other shows get in terms of ratings. It's actually, if you really want to have a conversation about ratings, it's not very difficult to understand. Even if AEW does low numbers according to the IWC, they're still literally shitting on some of the most popular TV shows. You know what wrestling struggles with? College football, Monday Night Football, You know, they struggle with the live sports, the NBA playoffs. They don't struggle against Housewives or Bravo TV shows or anything else.
No, it's the sports.
So there's more value from advertisers being in with wrestling and live sports. And the cool thing about that is regardless of how it plays out, there's no real loss for a company. I think there's a better chance that the NBA leaves Warner Bros. Than AEW, which is a good thing because if Warner Bros. Loses NBA, that's a huge one, but that's also a lot of money and a lot of priority for AEW. I think NBC ends up getting NBA. I think that's very realistic. But let's say, and this is where WWE was really smart, right? The CW, USA Network, and then a third entity. So WWE already has different television partners. If one of these companies' television networks go bye-bye, WWE can move their rights to one of these other companies, but they're with 3 different TV networks or potentially Amazon, right? So that makes it very fun to know, regardless of where WWE goes, they're going to get the best amount of money they can for their content. And the same thing applies to AEW, whether it's $1 billion, $2 billion, 800 million, 700 million. That's fantastic because nobody else is doing that other than wrestling and live sports.
Right.
And think about like what WWE is like kind of set this up as. Like they're on network TV with NXT. They're on cable with SmackDown, and they could potentially be on streaming. They're they have their hands in literally every single pot there is. And by the end of their next TV deal, they're going to have a better idea than I think a lot of other companies about like what like works for them, like what the future really is of streaming. Was it a really profitable venture? Because you know, there was talk that like, you know, SmackDown and Raw could both move to streaming and like WWE should just do it and like cut the cord. Like, and I'm just like, I think people don't understand like how much of a real risk that would be for a company. And I think like, obviously like we're moving towards streaming, but we're still in this weird space where one of the only things that works on cable network is like live sports. Like it's really one of the few things that people will tune in to watch outside of like one of these big shows like Game of Thrones, like we mentioned before. And I don't know, like I think it's really interesting. I think obviously Nick Khan is like the smartest person in professional wrestling. Like they're like as far as from a business standpoint, I don't think there's anyone who's doing it better, who's probably done it better. Even Vince in his heyday, I think Nick Khan like trounces it on all of them because, and I think it's really because like he's not a wrestling guy. Like he is a business guy, but he also like understands and he doesn't get in the way of WWE a lot. And I don't know. I think if he's able to somehow cut that deal where they're on streaming, they're on CW, they're on, you know, USA as well. It like, and they have their hands in everything. It's just going to help do what he's been doing since he joined WWE, which is grow it into a literal pop culture juggernaut. Like you don't talk about wrestling, you talk about WWE.
Yeah. They've done a really good job with that. I wanted to bring up this comment. Humble85 has been consistently watching our stream. So shout out to Humble. I appreciate this. She says, hold up, Vanderpump Rules did win on Wednesday nights against AEW, not trying to be shady. Now, I don't know if this is actually true, but this goes to show you something very significant, right? There's not that much competition in the TV world, which is actually for a lot of TV shows that exist. It's pretty fascinating to see that a startup wrestling company within 5 years can not only start off with a very good TV deal, but one where they have 5 hours of content between Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, plus the occasional Battle of the Belts, right? So one thing I did want to point out, and this is a question for both of you. I know me and Billy have talked about this before. For me specifically, ideally, I would prefer Raw on Monday nights, SmackDown on Tuesdays, NXT on Wednesdays, TNA on Thursdays. Now, those are 4 nights, but those are the 4 shows based on the nights that I would watch. That would be like based on my schedule, based on like things like that. That would be very ideal for me. Now, obviously, we have to factor in AEW as well. And I don't like what Dynamite being on Wednesday nights. And I don't want Dynamite to go head to head with NXT, but I think it could very well be a possibility, which NXT is doing incredible numbers right now based on where they were with NXT 2.0. But you got to factor in Rampage and Collision as well. So ideally for you yourself, where do you think you want these shows to end up? Like what days for yourself? And then do you think it makes a lot of business sense for them to go around that option? Because the last thing we need is Vanderpump Rules to keep beating AEW Dynamite.
That's funny. No, I mean, I'll say I agree. I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. For me, I think that's kind of the best route you can go for these shows, right? I
Yeah.
think I love the idea of SmackDown on Tuesdays. I think
I
that
used to love
that
it back
plays,
in the day. That's why I said it.
yeah,
On Tuesdays, it's
SmackDown
better.
on Tuesdays, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I'd say I 100% agree there. I think that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, let me get all my wrestling intake, and then every occasion, give me your Saturday or Sunday pay-per-view. I like that.
Before I get to you, Omer, because I want you to answer the question. But I was just gonna mention, so Raw on Mondays, SmackDown on Tuesdays, NXT and Dynamite on Wednesdays. Let's say they go head to head again, because you can't double dip too often. What if you do Wednesdays being Dynamite, Thursdays being Rampage for 1 hour? So that way they don't have to go too bad. They could do it at 10 o'clock like they were doing on Friday nights. I don't want them to go head to head with TNA personally, but let's say they do Rampage on Thursday nights, 1 hour slot, maybe 7 to 8, 8 to 9, whatever, and then Collision live on Fridays. This way they don't have to worry about pay-per-views on Saturdays messing up the Collision. Anyways, I just want to throw that out there, but I want to hear from you, Omer. I thought Billy made a good point. I would love to hear where you stand with it.
This is interesting because it's honestly not something I've given too much thought to. So like you're hearing like my raw thoughts on this. So in an ideal world, right? Like I love I like Raw, but my God, like 3 hours on a Monday night after work, I'm just like exhausted.
Sure.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll say. It would be interesting if you had Collision on Monday, right? You had, I think, NXT doing their thing on Tuesday. You had WWE or AEW Dynamite on Wednesday. And then you do Rampage on Thursday. I like that idea, like kind of like doing it with TNA.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do on Friday Raw. And
Whoa.
look, hey, yeah, look, I know.
Whoa.
Look, this is what happened when you ask good questions and you give me like a minute to think about it.
That's spicy.
I'm just screaming at the top of my head, just knowing that I would have to watch wrestling on a Friday or Saturday. Like it's gonna kill me, bro. I can't.
Dude,
I can't.
How do you think I feel? How do you think I feel like when I'm like, oh, the Rock is gonna be on SmackDown? Damn it! All right, well, we're gonna see
You're right.
But like, I mean, like, look, there's only so many days in the week, right? And it's like it's an impossible task to try to schedule like these things in a way where it works. I just like, I don't know. I would like to see things shaken up. I honestly would love to see what Raw does, not against like Monday Night Football. Like it would be interesting to see like what they can do with that. And I don't know. I don't know.
It's a hard question to answer when you think about it, because I told Billy, I told Billy last week on our live stream, I was like, hey, what are your thoughts on Rampage moving to Sundays? And the reason why was because it's 1 hour. And I thought about it too. I was like, maybe that's not a good idea because logistically, how do they record it? But if they did Collision on Friday nights, for example, they can just tape the 1 hour Rampage after Collision instead of Dynamite. And then if they do pay-per-views on Sunday nights, you just do a live Rampage right before the show. That's their AEW Rampage 0 hour for the pay-per-view or whatever the hell it is, But it's super hard because the one thing that none of us mentioned as well was ROH. And I'm not saying ROH is a big deal. I'm not saying ROH is a big deal, but if AEW is obviously negotiating TV rights and they're trying to package ROH with it, you got to find TV time for that too. And I mean, the problem is we have so much wrestling, good or bad, it doesn't really matter. We just have so much of it now. And, for me personally, that's why I say like Raw on Mondays, and people know this, I used to hate 3-hour Raws. Now it's not a big deal to me based on the last year of booking. But like Raw being 3 hours, it's still a little too much. plus they have Monday Night Football and shit like that. It cuts into stuff that, like, wrestling is my life, but also I love sports. I love watching the Pistons. I love watching football. It's very difficult to schedule this out. And I feel like there's going to be a major change with the way wrestling is put on TV with these new TV deals. And I don't think wrestling fans are ready for it. I think we're going to be really shocked to find out Dynamite either moves off of Wednesdays, goes somewhere else, or Collision moves off of Saturdays, or whatever. And at the end of the day, it's going to end up with wrestling companies going head to head in some capacity. And
right,
I don't mind it sometimes. I don't like it though, because I feel like, I mean, we can sit here and debate about creative back and forth all the time, but I feel like wrestling is actually much more enjoyable when you're logged off of Twitter, when you're comfy, you know, you take a fresh shower, put on your pajamas, put on some wrestling, and just sit
Please
there.
take a shower. Please
take a shower, friends, and, you know. But like when you take a fresh shower, you just had dinner, you know, 8 o'clock comes around, you're all comfortable in the Michigan winter, and you could just like lay off of the technology and watch Dynamite for 2 hours, and you don't have to listen to the noise. Like you can enjoy it, man. And the same thing with Impact, and the same thing with SmackDown. The problem that I always have though is SmackDown on Friday, Collisions on Saturday. You know, I do like to go out. I touch grass, and you know, the thing is, I put it this way, SmackDown got so good where I started going out after 10 p.m. That's how good SmackDown got. And just so you guys know, like the first 5-6 episodes of Collision or whatever it was, I didn't go out until 10 o'clock on Saturday nights too, because I was like, this shit's fire. So as much as I don't mind that, I would prefer not to do that, obviously. So it'd be really nice if they shake it up, man. And I think NXT going head to head with Dynamite would be, for me, I really do enjoy NXT. It's not a popular opinion, but I think NXT is one of the most consistently booked like wrestling shows. So I enjoy it. But maybe I need to go back to having 2 screens on and watching it, because I'd much rather have SmackDown on Tuesdays. I wouldn't mind this. What if because Rampage is pre-taped. What if you do Rampage being pre-taped after Dynamite, but being on the same night as Collision, but an hour before? So maybe Thursdays, you could do this, for example, Dynamite taping Rampage right after Dynamite, airs the next day prior to Collision. Or no, you could do it after Collision. Wednesday night, Dynamite live, tape for Rampage, Thursday's Collision. So Collision would go head to head with TNA unless TNA moved off the day. But they go head to head from 8 o'clock, right? 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock is live Collision. Rampage airs after Collision on Thursdays. Friday could be your ROH or TNA or whatever.
Yeah.
I think ROH and Rampage are like less excuse me. They're like less like of a priority, like in my view, in that like where they fit into things, because like they're both pre-tape shows. Like ROH especially is a streaming show. Like I enjoy a lot of the stuff on ROH. Like I think Athena has like low key had one of the best years that nobody has seen, or like a few people have seen. But I don't know. Like I think you run the risk with that 3-hour kind of thing of like having Rampage and then Collision or whatever, right? I think you do run a little bit of a risk of tiring out your fan base, exhausting them, like to the point where you could have less people tuning into Collision knowing that it's like a pre-taped show, knowing that like it doesn't really matter. Already having watched like 2 hours of great wrestling probably on on Collision, right? And just being like, all right, I don't need this. Like it's not canon, right? So I don't know, but it is interesting. I think the real interesting thing is going to be like, you know, for like Raw, if they do move to streaming, like how do you think like it's going to affect, you know, like how many people do you think are going to like in their head, like they're going to be people who tune in live regardless, like you're going to have like that dedicated million whatever people who tune in live, but how many people do you think are going to adjust their like viewing habits for Raw, knowing that it's kind of like streaming and or whatever? You don't think
it's
so?
going to be many. I don't think it's going to be many.
With WWE and AEW, if regardless of the company, if they went to a streaming deal, I think their fans will go and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, for me personally, like I use Amazon Prime. I watch ONE FC on there. I watch some movies on there. I use the app. That's why I don't mind it. I said in my video before, I was like, hey, listen, it might not be ideal for other people, but I get same day free shipping, 2-day free shipping, whatever. Plus I get all these movies and stuff, and then I get Raw. To me, the value is there, right? I'll still watch it live. The only thing that is really interesting to me is if they go live on Raw on Amazon Prime, how does it work for DVR capabilities? Do you just get to go back and watch it and rewind it, or do they put a limitation on that? Because nobody talks about that. But I will tell you off the rip, if AEW or WWE goes to a streaming app for live TV, no matter what viewership goes down, you don't do it to grow your fan base. You don't do it to grow viewership. You don't do it. You go for the bottom dollar. That's it. And that's why, like we were saying earlier with CW and USA Network, WWE already covered their asses there. But it is interesting because WWE and I mean any business, you're going for the money. I don't care what anybody says. You don't make business decisions for anything else.
You don't. I actually seen something where it was something along the lines, and this may suck for many people to hear, but this is the reality of it, right? Is that not the people are just like there to make the TV show look good. Is that wrong to say? But I feel like it's the truth behind it, right? You're a part of the show.
Yeah.
That's I hate to break it to wrestling fans, but you're not the end all be all to these companies. They're going after the bottom dollar. I genuinely agree with you.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really interesting 2024. I did not anticipate, if you look at what we've seen in the last 2 years, Vince McMahon allegations and WWE, TKO, UFC merger, rumors of Punk coming to WWE, then actually coming to WWE. And we thought that was chaos. Boys, I'm here to tell you 2024 is going to be insane. And the good thing for that is us content creators will have a lot to talk about.
Oh, 100%.
But I think what's even better for content creators is the fans, because for AEW, for example, again, let's take creative out of the equation. They got money. They got a billionaire who loves wrestling. They got money. And they're with a TV partner that gave them credibility right off the rip. So they lose that TV deal to WWE. Does it hurt? It does. We're not going to act like it doesn't, especially because Warner Bros. Is the one that's probably going to give them the most amount of money, right? But what's really cool about 2024 is that if WWE goes to WBD and then WBD moves on from AEW completely, like that WWE Raw deal's exclusive, AEW has to go somewhere else. If I already praise how good Warner Bros. Has been good to AEW, imagine what it could be with a company like ESPN or somebody else who's like, hey, we actually see more potential in you than Warner Bros. And then you have more money coming in, which, by the way, more money means fuck it. More TV shows, more this, more that, more signings, more whatever. There's more money coming in. So I just feel like 2024 is going to be bonkers when it comes to the news and rumors. And I would even go as far as saying for WWE and AEW and TNA, because I think TNA, they're interesting with their TV deal. Their company literally owns the TV network that they're on. But do we get to the point where, AEW doesn't have streaming deal technically? Do they go to a TV partner? Do they go to a TV partner and they collectively long-term agreement? Hey, we're building our portfolio for your streaming app. Does WWE go to Warner and then eventually get off of Peacock? Right? These are things that we're going to start hearing about these things, because if they start going to these streaming apps, for all we know, WWE and AEW could be all-in-one solutions for a TV partner down the line, where it's like, hey, you only get Peacock because they have soccer, this, that. Oh, and by the way, we have Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and pay-per-views. Or, hey, you get AEW, Dynamite, Collision, Rampage, ROH, and AEW pay-per-views.
Yeah, I think that's where it ends.
That's where I think long-term it gets to the point where cable unfortunately will die completely and streaming apps will die. But some of these juggernaut streaming apps will be like, hey, we have everything AEW on here.
Right.
I have a feeling we're going to talk about it a lot in the several months.
It'll be a slow, painful death though for cable. They're not gonna.
Man.
They're gonna
Yeah.
go down like
Yeah.
taking every bit. YouTube TV is gonna go down taking every bit of my money that they possibly can before they realize. All right, YouTube Plus. That's what we're going with.
Yeah. We did get another super chat from Rick Corrales for $5. He says, my question is, if WWE goes to Amazon Prime, are they going to charge extra? And this is also another fair question. I did want to bring this up because I saw it. Fellas, do you think it goes up in price? And two, are you willing to pay for it?
It's gonna go up anyway. They raise their prices like $5 every year. I'm paying like $20 a month for Netflix. So yeah, probably. And yes, I'll probably pay for it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's honest. Yeah, I mean I'm another person paying all that money for all these streaming apps. So yeah,
You know what's
pay for
funny?
it.
Back a couple years ago, there was Sling TV, AT&T TV Now, which became DirecTV Stream, a YouTube TV, Hulu Live TV with sports. They were all $35 a month for like insane amount of channels.
Man,
Now, if you go and look for the new prices, it's basically you're better off just getting live cable. You know,
yeah.
I will tell you this because Rick brought this up. I was like, yeah, you know, it probably goes up in price. Amazon, by the way, just laid off like 30% of their Twitch employees and 30% of their Amazon employees or something like that. It's a very insane layoff. This is what corporations do, right? They suck, but they'll end up making more money when they increase the price. And unfortunately, because of the nature of my business of covering wrestling, I'll have to pay for it. It would be a lot nicer if AEW and WWE was just like, all right, fucking take all of our shows and put it on your streaming app. And then, you know, if it was like $30 a month, but you're getting this, you know, all these movies, all these wrestling shows,
wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be too bad.
I'm just glad WWE didn't package Raw to like Amazon Prime, NXT to like Apple TV Plus, and then SmackDown to, you know, to Discovery Plus, or, you know, all these different.
Like I still got the option to turn on cable if I want to.
To any wrestling company out there watching, you will never get my money if you're trying to make me pay for like one of those whack streaming apps like this, like whatever Discovery Plus was before or any of that. No, you're not. you get the big three: Netflix, Prime, and Max. That's it. Like we're not dealing with Apple TV. We're not dealing with look, I guess I'm not. If AEW ends up on Apple TV, I'm not gonna watch AEW. But,
oh my.
No, probably.
That's the risk, though. By the way, though.
Yeah, it's a real.
That is the risk. It is the risk, man. People don't talk about the risk enough. But like Paramount and Warner Bros., the reason why they would merge is because they're both struggling to get actual paying customers on their apps, and they own a lot of high value intellectual properties. So imagine these companies have rights to like MTV and all of these different things that historically have massive tape libraries, and they're still struggling to get people to sign up. That's why streaming is such a tricky thing, because cable's dying a slow death, but the reality is cable's actually far much better for the consumer. The problem is, like in Michigan, if you get Xfinity, and I don't know what it's like in other states, but if you get Xfinity TV and internet, you might get a deal for the first 2 years being like $110 for 200 channels and DVR.
Which is better than paying, you know, maybe 140, 150 for a bunch of different streaming apps.
Yeah. The problem is after 2 years, though, the price goes up to like $300, and then you call that get your price down, and they're like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah,
so
because it was like the grandfather thing.
Yeah.
Being grandfathered in.
They all screw themselves. And I'll tell you right now, I predict that with television, this is a sweet spot, but eventually it crashes and burns. And that this will be the last big TV rights deals for both AEW and WWE. So they got to make it count, because I don't think that
statement. That's a
I don't think the TV industry will be able to afford the true values. Look at I think it was NCAA. They got less than $1 billion or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah,
that streaming bubble is gonna burst. Like, and when it does, oh, dude, every one of these companies is gonna have to reevaluate their stock positions, every single thing. Like, that's why you're seeing like WWE like making sure we're inflating the numbers now, so that in like 2, 3, 4, whatever, 5, whenever it happens, like we're in a place where like, you know, we can bear it, but like it's going to have a massive impact on not just like, you know, like streaming, like not just the way we view stuff, but like just entertainment altogether. It's going to be like, we're going to go from one of the most saturated like times of, content and content creation and shows and things to watch to like, I'm not saying like there's going to be like nothing new created, but we're going to see like, it's going to be less than what we're used to. And it's not going to be fun. Although I also think it's not fun when Netflix cancels shows after one season.
Absolutely.
And that's another problem that we have, right? Is knowing that with streaming, this is why it's so funny when people bring up the ratings, though, because look at AEW and look at WWE. There's shows that are actually successful, by the way, and they get thrown off their streaming deal or TV network. It happens. And I've watched shows, and this is actually a problem. I don't know if you guys have this problem, but I'll go back on Netflix or HBO Max or Peacock or whatever, and I'll go back and look at a series. I won't do any research. It's like 1 a.m. I click it. If I like it, I don't fall asleep. I keep watching it. I know I'm going to stick with it. I've gotten to the point where I've watched a show where there's maybe like 2 or 3 seasons. I really, really enjoy it. And then I don't see anything new for 3 years and I have to Google it. Season 4 release date. And then people are on Google saying, no, it's canceled. That's happened to like 3 or 4 or 5 shows that I've actually genuinely enjoyed watching. I'm like, I didn't even know it was canceled. And there was no
that was my whole
payoff
thing
to it.
about like, that was my whole thing about like Stranger Things, right? I know that's so basic, but Stranger Things, really, it took so long. It's taking so long for this last season. So it's something that just completely rubs me the wrong way at some of these streaming platforms.
Yeah. Rick did point out, by the way, he says, I ask because even as an Amazon Prime member, there's still content you have to buy or rent. I don't think WWE will. I don't think they'll charge you extra specifically for WWE Raw because Amazon does that for like the VOD content. They don't charge extra for you to have ONE FC or Thursday Night Football, but
I do think eventually we are going to get to a point for like the premium live events for both AEW, WWE, and even like any wrestling company. We're going to get to a point where like it's going to switch like an ESPN, like UFC kind of model where, yeah, you have the streaming deal and you can exclusively watch it on like, Hulu or wherever, but you have to pay like an extra like $20. You have to pay for this specific event. And then like, after like a month or 2 months, it's going to end up being like as part of the tape library.
That's going to fuck them really bad. It's going to fuck them really bad because they set the precedent for everybody that, hey, you're going to get it for the $10 a month. And I'll tell you off the rip with UFC, they keep increasing the prices of pay-per-views.
Yep.
And as somebody who genuinely enjoys watching MMA, I think paying $80 for a UFC pay-per-view is a ripoff because
it's absurd.
It's an absurd amount of money for what you're getting. But like sometimes fights get canceled. Sometimes they go to judges' decision. There's just a million reasons for it. But I will say if they start charging for pay-per-views again, I actually have no problem with it because of the fact that AEW has the partnerships with movie theaters, which is fantastic. There's a couple places I could speak of in Michigan that I used to go to back before the WWE network days, where you can go to a sports bar. There'd be a couple sports bars where they had the WWE pay-per-view rights on all the TVs. So we would go and grab food and drinks and stuff like that. Like I wasn't even 21 at that time, So if that happened and WWE pay-per-views were an absurd amount of money, I would go and enjoy it at a movie theater or whatever. Like I wouldn't do this whole thing of I'm going to pay for your streaming deal and I'm going to pay for your pay-per-views because it just doesn't make sense, especially when you've spoiled me for all these years that it was free with the streaming thing. And I'll tell you guys right now, even with AEW, World's End did less pay-per-view buys than all the other pay-per-views. And that was kind of shocking to me, honestly. I thought that was a little bit more shocking to me, regardless of how I feel about creatively the build. I thought World's End, the last pay-per-view of the year, I thought it would be a lot more than expected, and it didn't. The problem is the economy is not easy economy for people. So you can't sit there and ask for people for money and money and money and more money and then come to our shows and spend $300 on tickets and buy merchandise, do all of these different things. Oh, and by the way, you want to watch our pay-per-view, it's $40-$50. Like it's different with Impact. Like Hard to Kill is $40 and they don't run a pay-per-view every month. When AEW charges what, $50-$60, they weren't running a pay-per-view every month, so it's not as bad. But WWE has fucking 12-13 pay-per-views a year. What, you think I'm going to pay $40 for Crown Jewel 2 times a year? And Backlash
not happening.
And Extreme Rules Backlash? Like, no. Now, if they want to charge me for the Big Four or for WrestleMania, or at least WrestleMania at the least, I would be like, okay, I understand. Like one
Right.
pay-per-view a year, you charge me. I could see that. But I think if you're AEW and WWE, you do the monthly streaming pay-per-views for free. And that's how you grow your audience, bro.
The thing is, at the end of the day, it's like I don't even think it's gonna be WWE or AEW's decision. It's gonna be like these streaming platforms' decision to do that. And I think they're gonna. That's just the way I think it's gonna play out. I think eventually, like when they realize, because of one day these people will realize that there isn't this, you know, bottomless pit of money in streaming that they thought there was.
There's
Once they
not.
finally come to their senses and realize that, they're gonna be forced to like charge us even more for these things that we want to watch. I will say this: professional wrestling, more so than like all these other shows, like there's only a few like properties and a few like I think types of content that do very well in these like types of deals, and I think professional wrestling has a lot to offer. Like if you look at TV shows, like there's really not a lot of TV shows that really like, you know, bring in new eyeballs, bring in new customers. Like The Office is like one of the few, very few that actually does that.
Yeah.
When those rights are sold off. But professional wrestling, like whether it's like AEW having like 800,000 like devoted people who are going to tune in no matter what, or if it whittles down to like 500,000, like there's going to be like a certain like hundreds, if not tens of thousands of people who are going to be like paying for your platform no matter what if you get AEW. Like, and that's just a fact. Same thing with WWE, right? And that for these companies right now is a major deal. That's why like I think professional wrestling in this new media space is going to do well. And it's like people are like, are they going to survive once like these like media rights aren't as lucrative as they are? I think yes. And I think like because at the end of the day, live sports, professional wrestling, which has a very diehard fan base, like in a way that like is so different that people really don't understand. Like it is going to survive, and I think it's going to thrive, especially given where it is today. The fact that there is more professional wrestling on TV, and it goes back to that, like the fact that there are more companies that are like here looking for a TV deal. It is fantastic for the future of not only these companies, but the wrestlers, the fans. Go watch professional wrestling that you love, people.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Could I have said it better? I will say one last thing before we call it a night, because this actually became a lot longer than anticipated. That's kind of what happens when you have good conversation.
It is.
With the TV deal stuff, there's obviously a lot of intrigue there. Free agent stuff, there's a lot of intrigue there. And when I was watching Dynamite tonight, and I was like, man, they're just inconsistent for what I saw last week to this week. I just felt like it wasn't that. I wasn't that happy. I didn't have the same feeling that I had last week, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized something as we were talking about TV deals. And this is probably one of the best feelings in professional wrestling. TNA, over 20 years of bad business ownership and bad stuff. They found Scott D'Amore and Anthem, and they've turned it around. We're going into Hard to Kill Saturday. It's a massive, massive day for TNA. We're going into AEW, trying to figure things out this year. Potential big free agent signings, new TV deals. Could potentially be a massive year for them, especially if they get the crazy TV deal that makes them profitable, right? It changes the landscape for them. Then obviously we have WWE and all the big things that they're doing. What is your one bold prediction for 2024? It doesn't matter the company, but this is the bold prediction that you feel is absolutely realistic, because there's a lot going on. Wrestling is huge, ups and downs, but I'm putting you on the spot. One bold prediction that you fully believe could happen. I'm not saying, oh, you think it will happen, but just what you think could very well happen because it's that realistic.
Homer, you could start with this one.
I mean, just like generally for 2024.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I had a few. Like, I guess the most realistic one is probably I don't think that Cody is going to finish the story at WrestleMania. Not that I don't want that to happen. I did say last year I didn't want it to happen, but that was because I thought that they would tell a better story afterwards, which they didn't do. But I was wrong on that, and hopefully I'm wrong on this too. Like I wouldn't mind being wrong on this, but I just, man, I just think that if The Rock is there, it's gonna be too much for them to pass up. Hope I'm wrong, but that is a bold prediction of mine. I don't think Cody's gonna finish the story at Mania.
That is a bold prediction. That is
Billy.
bold. For me, it could happen. It may happen. I'm not sure how bold it is, but I believe that Drew McIntyre does.
Hold on. You're lagging. The AOL's acting up. What'd you say?
So Drew McIntyre ends up in AEW.
Okay. So Omer, what was your prediction again? You said Cody doesn't finish the story.
Cody doesn't finish the story.
Billy says Drew McIntyre goes to AEW. Fellas, for as much as I appreciate your predictions, one, Cody is finishing the story, so F off. That's the first thing. Second thing is Drew McIntyre is staying in WWE. But you know what I predict, fellas? Ready?
What's that?
I believe 1000% it could very well happen. AEW and WWE come to an agreement for a talent exchange, a trade. I think it very well happens. It happened a couple of years ago with UFC and ONE FC. Endeavor is no stranger to trading a contract to another company. I think we'll see a groundbreaking agreement between WWE and AEW where there will be a certain WWE talent who wants to leave the company and a certain AEW talent who wants to leave the company, and they will work on facilitating that transfer between two companies. And that is a very crazy prediction. But Endeavor is a company that, when it comes to talent, they did it with Ben Askren and Demetrius Johnson for the UFC.
Who'd that work out for?
Well, honestly, I think it worked out for UFC more, believe it or not, because Askren became the biggest meme ever, but that kind of changed things for UFC a little bit. Demetrius Johnson obviously killing it in ONE FC, but yeah. But I think we see an agreement between both companies. They will do a trade. I think we see an agreement of some kind. My prediction, let's simplify it. My prediction is WWE and AEW agree on something. but in all seriousness, I do think they go for a talent trade. I think we'll see something where along the lines AEW will want somebody and WWE will make the trade. I think it sounds crazy. I definitely do, but I think it's realistic. I don't think there's anything off limits with this new regime, and Nick Khan will do whatever's best for business. And I think Tony Khan is also not stupid. I think if it makes sense and it makes money, you do it.
The audaciousness of you to the way you dismissed our take, like Billy actually had a realistic take, a way more realistic take than I think either of us. Like I think Drew McIntyre very well could end up in AEW.
I don't agree. I told Billy this. I don't think so, though. He knows.
But I'm just saying, you. But you think AEW and
the
WWE
talent exchange,
talent exchange? That's bro. You know I appreciate you. I love you. All that stuff. But my G, like, you got me out here on like Stephen A. Smith. I need you to lay off the weed. Nah.
Just kidding.
No, that would be great though. That would actually be great for not only like fans but also the wrestlers. Because you know damn well there's like wrestlers that aren't doing, like sometimes like Cody like said when he left AEW that, you know, like sometimes it's just time to leave the territory.
Yeah.
And like it's a true thing. Like sometimes you've done all you can for that time in WWE or AEW.
Just
and, like, it's time to move on and like more feuds, better matches.
Yeah.
So I would like that.
I think a lot of times people really think about the tribalism, like they think it extends backstage, but for a lot of guys, it's not even so much about like your boss. Like sometimes it's just, man, I need a different setting, a different environment. I have friends in different companies, or I want to work less or whatever it may be. The only reason why I don't think the Drew thing is possible is because I do think there's been too much confusion surrounding his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen Drew McIntyre play into it on TV. And even at live events, it looks like he's playing into it. And I don't think Drew genuinely has an issue with WWE. I think there might be, I think for any person, by the way, who works a job, there's always going to be some sort of frustrations. But I don't think the reports and what we're seeing in front of us is that big of a thing. I think WWE is putting Drew on TV right now because they have plans for him and they've been developing a story. And I think he does stay with them. I do think Cody finishes a story 1000%. I think that's always been the play. And yeah, maybe my prediction is crazy, fellas, but that's why the Ango show is so awesome because it sparks new ideas. And obviously, whenever I fantasy book something, it's based on what I want to see. And no matter how much Tony Khan and WWE and all these guys, people think there's a real war between them, no matter what Tony Khan says at media scrums, business always comes first. And guess what? Money doesn't really give a fuck about your feelings. And at the end of the day, if Tony Khan could make money, Tony Khan's going to make money. And Nick Khan and Triple H and Ari Emanuel, if they can make money, they'll do it. I'll say this, if WWE had an opportunity to make a shit ton of money working with AEW, they would do it. That the time is not now.
If it made business sense, absolutely.
If it made business sense and it made them more money, I don't think anything is literally off the table. And that's why, as much as my prediction is crazy, as much as I know it's crazy, and Tony Khan can call Triple H a bald asshole or whatever, and Tony Khan could bring up gender and WWE.
If Eric Bischoff can walk into that company in 2002,
yeah,
anything can happen.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe Drew really did re-sign with the company, and then Tony Khan's like, dude, I really want him, and I'll give you guys Ricky Starks and Athena, I don't know. I'm just throwing Athena.
Ours.
I'm just saying, like, if you're WWE and like AEW, you're like, okay, fuck, he really wants to go. He's in a contract. We're not going to release him. We'll do a trade. Let's get a trade going. I don't know. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I swear, I really don't think it's that far-fetched. And if you're AEW, let's just be prepared for this now, fellas. We know there's talent that want to dip. We know there's talent in WWE. No matter who's running it, they're going to want to go to. We know this.
Yep.
I'm sure Cedric Alexander, I can't speak for the homie, but I'm sure he don't like not being utilized consistently. Like,
absolutely.
And I'm not speaking for anybody, but I'm just saying, I'm sure there's people who are not happy in their situations, and things could always come together. Oh, bonus prediction, by the way, TNA and WWE really do work together in some capacity.
Yeah. That one's real. That one's realistic.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll throw in so I did like a 3-bowl prediction thing. My wildest bowl prediction.
Yeah.
That like literally threw my co-host into a frenzy was, I think one of the big matches at All In ends up being Mercedes Moné versus Becky Lynch. And like, here's the thing. There's like a 5% chance that Becky actually signs with AEW, and within that, like, it's like a whatever percent chance that ends up being the match. But I'm like, if there's one thing we've definitely learned in professional wrestling, never say never. Like CM Punk, I witnessed it. I was in Chicago. He came back. It was a wild ride to get there, but it happened.
Yeah.
A lot can happen in the business world, in people's personal lives over just a matter of a few months. You never know what the hell people are thinking. We're just observing this from the outside. I'm just saying, like,
brother, did you ever think Adam Copeland would have ended up in AEW, especially after that send-off? When we heard for over a year that Edge wanted to retire in Canada, he gets the match on Canada and they celebrate him. It wasn't until literally like the day or two before where it was like, oh, he's going to AEW, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
wrestling's unpredictable. And here's the thing. I feel bad for the internet wrestling community when inevitably more people leave both companies. And me personally, I will be enjoying every second of it, because here's the flip side. If I want Wardlow to go to WWE, if I would want to see MJF go to WWE, if I want Ricky Starks in WWE, I said in the beginning of the stream, I was heated. I said Ricky Starks losing to Sammy Guevara is stupid. I 1000% stand by that. I feel like Triple H or Scott D'Amore could make shit ton of money with him.
Mm-hmm.
I want him gone from AEW. I like this guy a lot. I don't think he's been booked well. That's just my personal opinion. But if I want that to happen, I have to be willing to accept one of my favorites in WWE potentially leaving. But I think that's a good thing. I love Edge in AEW. Like, I think, like, I see people complaining about him and Griff Garrison. I'm like, no, this is fine. Like, this is awesome. This is what you're supposed to do.
I said that was fire. That was great.
You put talent with up and comers. Like, I like the fact that people will be able to learn and benefit from working with new talent, from fresh talent. And, the thing that's intriguing about the Becky Lynch prediction and Mercedes, that should be a main event at All In. That should be the main event of All In.
Yeah.
And if Tony Khan really, like, let's just say that was a big thing that Tony Khan could do, you better make sure your women before that are represented very well on your show, because then nobody will complain. But if you're just doing it just because it's two female names that are the biggest in the industry, you don't really give a shit about women's. It'll never work because you don't show that you care about women's wrestling. But if you're doing it every single week and then you make it happen, fucking props to you, bro, because that's huge. Just like I think Jade and Charlotte one day will main event WrestleMania. Yeah, Becky and Mercedes main eventing All In would be fucking awesome.
Yeah, my little bonus bold prediction is that for me, I think Mercedes is going to end up in TNA. Sorry. I know that breaks everything that's being said here. It's bold. I stand by it.
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Before we end it, we'll end the stream in 5 minutes. So in the chat, get your super chats in or whatever. Fellas, get your last, whatever you guys want to talk about last. But let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Mercedes and Becky at All In. Let's say Becky signed to AEW and Mercedes signed to TNA. TNA Knockouts champion, AEW Women's champion. Main event.
Yep.
See, like, what's cool about the AEW and TNA thing, and this is why I'm hopeful that WWE, they're trying to play nice with these other companies. I'm glad that they are. I hope they do it for the right reason. I don't necessarily have the belief that they are. I think they want to buy up everybody in Japan and stuff. But with AEW, what's really cool about that Mercedes and Becky thing is this entire time we're thinking maybe Mercedes goes to AEW. If Mercedes went to TNA and you brought Becky to All In, hey, TNA, it's going to be All In, like the original All In, multiple companies involvement.
Yeah.
And we want the women to main event. And this is the match.
I don't think it's out of this realm.
There is nothing out of this realm in wrestling anymore. I promise you that. I could be certain of it.
Yeah.
Name if there's one podcaster, one journalist, one content creator out there that says no, it's impossible, that sounds stupid, that's ridiculous. Right, I promise you, they have
shows.
Everything in wrestling in the last 2 years has told me. I'm telling you guys, I thought WWE for my entire life, Vince McMahon would likely die, and then Shane McMahon, Stephanie, and Triple H run it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, I thought for sure that when they got into Endeavor, the first concern that I had with Endeavor was they are going to change everything about WWE for the worst immediately. You will notice it right away. They're going to make aggressive changes. That didn't happen. It got better, actually. I thought with Edge going to AEW, I was like, man, they're going to fucking make him look stupid out there. But they didn't, right? Like, that's the cool thing about wrestling is, like, everything that you think you know about wrestling, somehow these companies go to show you that they actually are better than you give them credit for. And this is why my criticisms are always typically about booking or business decisions and what I would do differently, because of the fact that I just do it based on how I like. You know what I mean? But, like, look at Adam Copeland. Like, this is a real thing too, actually. We could say this really quick. Adam Copeland doesn't have the Edge name. He didn't move big numbers for AEW going there. But watching him on TV has been very enjoyable compared to him just doing one-off feuds in WWE every so often. So nothing is out of this realm for sure.
Absolutely. That's why 2024 is going to be a great year. And that's why Ango and Billy and me are all going to be creating wonderful content all throughout the year talking about this stuff. So
absolutely.
Guys, this was the most random live stream I have ever done. But I truly enjoyed the hell out of you guys coming and being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I have put their URLs in the chat several times throughout the stream, as well as on the screen as well. Billy at youtube.com/@BillyTKO. And
it don't always look like AOL.
Yeah, I don't always look like AOL. That is true.
No.
Nope. He streamed off his Minecraft webcam.
Yeah, I did. Okay, I chose that today.
He's going to unplug his landline next time, and he's going to look great.
Yeah.
Right.
And so definitely check out Billy. maybe 1 or 2 more subscribers, his internet magically gets better. I
You
don't know.
guys can fix it.
Yeah. And shout out to Omer. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what I'm trying
Now
to
I'm
say.
concerned. What is the word? you're looking-
Spur of the moment
Yeah.
addition to the live stream, but I thought this was a very eventful and fruitful conversation. Everybody has different perspectives on wrestling, but the one thing we all have in common is that we enjoy wrestling. And it's very easy to go on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and see a whole bunch of people argue with you and name call and stuff like that. But the community that we're building here on the channel is one that is of positivity and fun, and we all enjoy the same thing. So let's talk about it. So for all of you that have joined us in the live chat, super chats, all of that, I appreciate it. If you guys were watching on Billy's feed, we appreciate you as well. I feel like we got to do something like this again. So I'll be in talks with you fellas. Anything else you guys want to promote? Any links that you guys want to share? Do that now before we get off the air.
I'm cool. I appreciate everybody in here. You guys
Subscribe
are
to More Ango, everyone. Go over to
More Ango.
More Ango.
Wow.
The plug.
Subscribe to More Ango, everyone.
Hey, that channel is fun as hell. That channel's fun. I love that
Ango.
channel.
That's
The
why I'm
thing
telling
is,
people to subscribe.
see, the thing is, people will read my titles or my thumbnails or like my 262 character tweets, and they'll be like, "Oh, this guy hates WWE or this guy hates AEW," and it's like so tiresome, man. Because if you really listen to the words I say, I think I'm very level-headed. And shout out to whoever said that in the chat. I think we're all very level-headed. Literally, Omer started off. He's like, "This was excellent," and then what happened is like you start to have conversation, and you're like, "Oh, it was fun, man." Very good conversation. 3 hours. I cannot believe we did it.
Whoa.
My friends, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by. We will see you next time.